Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. Let's say you wake up in a place where the sky is too wide, the ground too dry, and your mouth full of gritty sand. There's a buzz in your ear, not digital, but insect. You're lying face down in the middle of a beige nowhere, and you're already sunburned. Congratulations, you've somehow landed in the Wild West. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and current time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your head is pounding, your lips are cracked, and your boots... Wait, when did you get boots? Are full of fine hot dust. Your pants feel stiff, made of something not meant to bend at the knees, and your shirt smells like campfire, sweat, and something vaguely equine. You sit up slowly and take in the view. Miles of baked earth, scattered stitch brush, and a shimmering horizon that might be water, or just your last hallucination. There's no road, no cell signal, obviously, and no sound beyond the occasional buzz of a cicada and the distant call of a bird that's probably waiting for you to die. The sun is merciless, hanging high and unbothered, and every breath tastes like the inside of a barbecue pit. You've got nothing but the clothes on your back, a crumpled hat beside you, and a strange heavy belt cinched around your waist. Oh, there's a revolver holstered at your hip. Okay, sure, that's comforting. You stand, legs wobbling, and squint toward what looks like a dusty trail. You figure it's as good a direction as any. After what feels like hours, probably 20 minutes, you crest a ridge and see it. A town, or at least a cluster of wooden buildings that's either civilization or the set of a poorly funded indie western. There's a church steeple, a water tower, and a sign leaning sideways. Welcome to Widow's Rest, Pop. 312. You start down the hill, boots crunching on the gravel. As you approach, you realise just how loud your footsteps are. Every movement echoes in the empty stillness, and you can't shake the feeling that eyes are on you. Sure enough, as you reach the main street, doors creak open. Heads poke out. A woman in a bonnet crosses herself. A kid tugs on his mum's sleeve and whispers, "That person looks real weird." You're the alien here, and you can feel it in your bones. The first person who talks to you is a boy, maybe 9 or 10, with a slingshot hanging from his pocket and freckles absolutely monopolising his face. "Hey, mister," or, "ma'am, you're not from around here, huh?" He's looking at your clothes, your belt buckle, your weird semi-modern haircut, maybe the band logo faintly visible under your now dusty shirt. You nod slowly. No point in pretending. "I think I hit my head," you offer, the safest lie in the world. "Can you tell me where I am?" He grins. "You're in Widow's Rest, middle of nowhere. You want the doctor or the sheriff?" You consider that for a moment. Which one's less likely to shoot me? He thinks about it. Sheriff, probably. Doc's been real twitchy since the cholera scare. Cool. Cholera. You mentally add that to the list of reasons you might not make it through the week. The sheriff's office is a sagging wooden building that smells like gun oil, tobacco, and damp dog. Sheriff Bell is inside, lounging in a chair with his boots on the desk, cleaning a rifle that looks like it's seen more action than your whole high school. He's got a thick moustache, a sleepy eye, and an expression that says he's been alive too long to be impressed by literally anything. You introduce yourself using the fake name that pops into your head first, because saying, "I'm from the future and I woke up here by accident," is probably not going to win you friends. The sheriff narrows his eyes, gives a slow nod, and gestures to the chair opposite his desk. "Name's Bell. You ain't the weirdest thing I've seen come through here, but you're close." You try not to take that personally. He listens as you give him the vague, amnesia-adjacent version of your story. No money, no horse, no idea how you got here. His brows twitch upward exactly once. "You'll need a place to stay and work to earn it," he says. "Can't have you loafing around and spooking the townsfolk. You handy with anything? Shooting? Cooking? Sweeping floors?" You say. "I have experience with spreadsheets." He stares at you. You clear your throat. "I mean, I can read, write, handle customers." That earns you a grunt of approval. "We'll send you to Mrs. Halloway's general. She's always complaining about lazy help. Go on and try not to get shot before sundown." You thank him, and as you stand he adds, Also, don't drink the water from the creek. Last fella who did grew a third ear. He doesn't crack a smile. You can't tell if he's joking. Honestly, you don't want to know. Outside, the town has resumed its slow-motion bustle. A man rides past on horseback, tipping his hat at someone with a flick of the reins. A woman is hanging laundry, humming something plaintive and tuneless. The sun's dropped a bit, casting golden rays between the buildings and kicking up little bursts of wind that roll down the street like ghosts. You walk slowly, absorbing the textures. The dry wood planks, the scent of hay, the fly-buzzing stillness that says this place is equal parts charming and potentially lethal. Fun historical fact. Towns like Widow's Rest, off the main railroad line and 100 miles from any coast, were often built almost overnight by the settlers and developers, hoping to strike it rich on a nearby mine, water source, or cattle trail. Most of them didn't last more than a few years. You're basically in a living antique mall that just happens to be full of real danger. Fringe fact? There were cases of people just appearing in old western towns with no memory and no records. Scholars often chalked it up to trauma, runaway fugitives, or that old reliable syphilis. But who's to say you're not part of one of those unexplainable stories now? And the open debate? There's still no full scholarly consensus on how accurate the Wild West really was in terms of lawlessness. Some historians argue that it was much more organised and regulated than pop culture lets on, especially in terms of gun control and crime rates. But tonight, as the first night of your new life settles in around you, you feel like law and chaos are about 50-50, and you're dead centre. You walk through the double doors of Halloway's general store with a polite nod that you hope doesn't come off too modern. The place smells like dry beans, soap and old wood, kind of like a combination of a pantry, a lumberyard and a mild fire hazard. A bell over the door tinkles as you enter, and immediately you hear someone grumble from the back. I swear to St. Elmo's ghost, if that's Jasper again looking for free nails, I'm going to feed him a fist sandwich. You take a careful step forward, boots creaking against the floor. No nails needed, you say cautiously. Sheriff Bell sent me. Said you might need some help. There's a pause, then the sound of a heavy box being set down. From behind a curtain strung across the storage area steps a woman with arms like fence posts and an expression that could sour milk. Mrs. Halloway doesn't look like she takes nonsense from anyone, including the laws of gravity or God himself. She's got a bandana tied around her head, rolled sleeves and an apron stained with flour, ink, and something that might be blood. "You?" she says, raising an eyebrow. "You don't look like much. Can you read?" "Yes." "Right." "Yes." "Lift a barrel." You pause. Define lift. She smirks, barely. "Good, you've got manners, sarcasm, and I'm too tired to argue. You're hired. Sweep the floors, mind the till, don't steal, don't eat the pickled eggs, and if anyone draws a gun inside, just duck and let fate sort it out." Your first job in the Wild West is, apparently, entry-level retail. Figures. You pick up a broom and get to worries, trying not to breathe in too much of the dust you're just redistributing across century-old planks. The customers come and go. Men in worn hats, women with tired eyes, children who keep poking the jars of rock candy. One guy tries to pay with a chicken. Another spends 5 minutes sniffing every type of soap before choosing none. You quickly learn that bartering is an art, not a science, and prices aren't so much fixed as fluid depending on who's asking. Mrs. Halloway watches you like a hawk, but doesn't say much after the first hour. She seems impressed you haven't passed out from the heat or tripped over a sack of flour. You get the sense that earning her approval is kind of like getting a cactus to hug you back. Not impossible, but likely painful. Mid-afternoon, a cowboy stumbles in with a nosebleed and a grin that says he probably deserved it. "Got in a spat," he explains, dabbing his face with a dirty kerchief. "Old man Travers said I watered down my whiskey. I said he watered down his bloodline. And well..." Mrs. Halloway hands him a rag and slaps a bottle of rubbing alcohol on the counter. "Use this, and get out before you drip on the flour sacks." He salutes her with the bottle and winks at you on the way out. You're not sure whether to feel flattered or deeply concerned. By sundown, your legs are sore, your back is tight, and your shirt is soaked in sweat. You're sitting behind the counter counting coins, actual coins, heavy and cold and scattered with strange symbols, when Mrs. Halloway drops a tin plate in front of you. "Dinner," she says, then walks away. You look down. It's beans, just beans, possibly the same beans from the giant burlap sack you unloaded earlier. Still, they're warm and weirdly comforting, and you eat every bite with the enthusiasm of someone who narrowly avoided dying of sunstroke this morning. Outside, the sky shifts from orange to plum, then dark indigo. Lamps flicker on inside the shop, casting everything in soft yellow. You sit by the window for a while, watching the occasional person stroll by. One guy rides past on a donkey playing a harmonica. A woman leads 2 goats down the street like it's the most normal thing in the world. You're starting to get the sense that everyone here is just barely keeping it together, and somehow you're fitting in. Now here's a historical truth. Frontier general stores weren't just shops, they were lifelines. They sold everything from gunpowder to perfume, and they doubled as informal post offices, gossip centres, and, on occasion, makeshift funeral homes. If a town didn't have a general store, it wasn't really a town, it was just a suggestion. Fringe fact, some stores used squirrel pelts as currency when coins ran short. Squirrel. Pelts. You could, theoretically, buy dinner with a bag full of bushy-tailed rodents if your timing was right and your aim was good. Of course, there's an open debate among historians about the actual economy of the Wild West. Was it more barter or cash? Some argue the West was more cash-heavy than we think, thanks to gold rushes and mining towns flooding the region with coinage. Others believe the barter system dominated, especially in smaller, isolated communities like the one you've landed in. Back in the store, Mrs. Halloway finishes closing up and tosses you a small cloth bundle, your wages, apparently. Inside are 2 silver coins, a stub of chalk, and a button that doesn't match any of your clothes. "Sleep in the loft," she says, jerking a thumb toward the staircase behind the curtain. "Don't burn anything down." You thank her, tuck the bundle into your pocket, and make your way upstairs. The loft is a tight space with a hay-stuffed mattress and 1 small window. There's no glass, just a shutter, but the night air is cool and carries the scent of dry grass and chimney smoke. You lie down, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the slats. So far, you've survived a sun-blasted morning, charmed a suspicious shopkeeper, handled cash that predates your great-great-grandparents, and avoided shooting or being shot. All in all, not a bad first day. But there's one small detail you're trying not to obsess over. That revolver on your hip, it feels familiar, like you've used it before, like it was meant to be there. And you're starting to wonder whether you really just woke up here, or if something somewhere put you exactly where you're supposed to be. Morning breaks with the aggressive squawk of a rooster and the sharp, sour scent of manure wafting through your tiny loft window. You wake up stiff, every joint complaining, your mouth dry enough to exfoliate your tongue. Outside, boots crunch over dirt and voices echo down the street. People already hard at work while you lie here wondering how it's possible to be sore from sweeping. You drag yourself downstairs to find Mrs. Halloway already restocking the salt barrels. She doesn't greet you, just jerks her chin toward the broom as if to say, "You know the drill, City Slicker." You set to work sweeping again, this time with a little less resentment. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you realise how comforting it is to have a task, even if it's just chasing dust in endless circles. You make it until mid-morning before trouble walks in. A man bursts through the swinging doors like he's rehearsed it, tall and grimy, spurs jangling with each step. He's got a thick beard, a sun-beaten face, and a long brown duster that looks like it's eaten its fair share of bullets. His hand rests casually on the butt of a pistol, and he scans the store with the lazy confidence of someone who's either law enforcement or very much not. "Morning, Miss Halloway," he drawls. "Morning, Cobb," she replies, not looking up from her ledger. "Try not to bleed on anything." Cobb's eyes land on you. "New help?" "Temporary," she says. He walks over, staring you down with unnerving intensity. "What's your name?" You give him the same fake one you used with the sheriff. He grins. "Funny. That's the name of a bounty I saw posted outside Carson's station last week. Said something about fraud, theft, and peculiar behaviour. Said the person was real slippery." You laugh nervously. "Weird coincidence." He studies you for another beat, then leans in close enough for you to smell whiskey and saddle leather on his breath. "This town's got rules, stranger. Keep your hands clean, your mouth shut, and your boots moving, understand?" You nod. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Then he buys a pouch of tobacco, flips a coin onto the counter, and leaves with the same overdone swagger he arrived with. Mrs. Halloway waits until he's out of earshot, then says without looking up, "That's Jim Cobb. Sometimes he's a deputy, sometimes he's an outlaw, usually he's both by noon." You exhale slowly. Great. Love that. She finally looks at you. "You've got the wrong kind of face for this place. You're too curious. You smell like education." You blink. That's a thing people can smell? Out here, it's a survival skill. After lunch, she sends you on an errand to deliver a parcel across town. A box of spools and a half-pound of licorice, she tells you. "Don't eat any of it, or I'll gut you and sell the soap." Classic frontier charm. The streets are livelier now. A man is sweeping in front of the barber's, a dog barks from a porch, and a group of kids runs by yelling something about rattler wrangling, which you sincerely hope is a game and not a literal activity. As you pass the saloon, music trickles out. Banjo, piano, and a woman's laughter wrapped in cigar smoke and the clink of glasses. The building you're looking for is wedged between the dressmaker's shop and a livery stable, its sign half-hanging. Emma Finch, Sewing Supplies and Sundries. You knock, step inside, and immediately get a face full of muslin and mothballs. A small woman in her 60s appears from behind a wall of fabric, her hair tightly coiled into a bun that could deflect arrows. She eyes the package, nods, and takes it with a curt thank you. Then she does something unexpected. She leans in, grips your wrist, and whispers, "Don't trust anyone who offers you lemonade, not in this town." You nod like that makes sense, and back out slowly, your arm still tingling where she touched you. Back on the street, you decide to detour past the saloon, not to drink, you're not brave enough for frontier alcohol just yet, but to peek inside. The building is dim, all red velvet and scuffed floors, lit by dusty sunlight spilling through warped glass. A bartender is wiping mugs with a rag that looks like it could legally be declared a biohazard. A piano player tickles out a tune in the corner, and a woman in a yellow dress with a slit that defies physics lounges near the stairs, eyeing you like a hawk spotting a mouse with anxiety issues. You turn to leave and crash directly into a card table. "Watch it!" barks a man with a cigar clamped in his teeth. He's got a hand of cards, a pile of coins, and an expression that says he's one ace away from murder. "Sorry," you mumble, stepping back. The other players, two grizzled cowboys and a man with an eye patch, stare at you. One of them lifts a bushy eyebrow. "You play?" You shake your head. "I'm not good." "Perfect," says the man with the cigar. "We love easy money." Against your better judgment, and possibly because you're still dizzy from the weird warning about lemonade, you sit down. The cards are slick with years of use. The rules, mostly poker, partly chaos. You win the first hand by accident. You lose the next three by spectacular margins. Then one hand later you get dealt two aces. Your heart starts pounding. You raise the bet. The man with the cigar matches it, grinning. Then slowly he lays down his hand, 3 queens and 2 jacks. You've been played. He rakes in the pot, laughs and nods. Welcome to Widow's Rest. You leave the saloon $5 poorer and considerably humbler. Back at the general store, Mrs. Halloway doesn't say anything about your detour. She just tosses you a bundle of cloth. "You need proper clothes," she says. "You look like a dentist on holiday." You thank her, go upstairs and change into the stiff cotton shirt and rugged trousers. They're itchy, but they fit. And you look a little less like an interdimensional tourist. You stash your modern underwear under the mattress for now. No sense in confusing the locals with elastic technology. Here's a historical note for you. Card games were everywhere in the Wild West. Especially Faro, which has almost completely disappeared today. Poker was around, but Faro dominated saloons for years. It was simple, fast and easy to cheat at. Exactly what gamblers loved. Fringe fact: some saloons hired women to deal cards, not just for the spectacle, but because they were statistically better at detecting cheating and had better memories for faces. Female dealers were the secret weapon of many a frontier saloon. The scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether saloons were more centres of crime or community. Were they dangerous dens of vice, or just the town's social hub where deals were made, marriages arranged, and the piano never stopped playing? The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. You lie down that night, shirt sticking to your back, revolver resting on the crate you've started using as a nightstand. Your winnings are gone, your pride is bruised, but for the first time since you got here, something about the smell of dust and pine oil feels almost normal. The next morning, the first thing you notice is the smell. Not the usual dust and wood smoke, but something more human. A blend of unwashed bodies, damp leather and stale tobacco. You realise with horror that the scent is you. Hygiene in the Wild West is less self-care routine and more survive until you stop stinking worse than everyone else, which, given the town's current olfactory average, is a very low bar. You sit up on the hay-stuffed mattress and glance toward the bucket and rag in the corner. There's also a sliver of yellow soap wrapped in waxed cloth which Mrs. Halloway shoved into your hand last night with a grunt. "Wash, you're starting to smell like my ex-husband's armpit," she'd said, "and he's been dead 6 years." You carry your supplies to the back of the general store, where a tiny rickety lean-to serves as a bathhouse. It's a glorified washtub, a dented kettle for warming water, and a curtain that flaps aggressively in the wind, like it's trying to preserve your dignity and failing. You pour water from the barrel, light the tiny stove underneath the kettle, and begin the delicate process of washing without freezing to death or flashing the entire neighbourhood. You scrub with soap that smells like pine tar and regret, using the rag like it owes you money. The water turns murky with yesterday's sweat and saloon dust. You even attempt to clean your teeth using a twig that's been frayed on one end. It's like chewing bark, but your mouth no longer tastes like you've been licking a tombstone. By the time you're done, your skin is red, your back aches from bending over the tin tub, and your fingers are pruny. But you feel almost human again. And that's when the nosebleed kid from your first day appears outside the curtain. "You done yet?" he calls. "Sheriff's looking for you." "Can this wait?" "Nope," he said now. "Also, you missed a spot on your neck. Looks like a map of Kansas." You sigh, pull on your clothes, still dusty but marginally less offensive now, and make your way toward the sheriff's office. The streets are buzzing more than usual. Folks are talking in low voices, glancing over shoulders, and even the stray dogs look tense. Sheriff Bell meets you on the porch, spitting tobacco juice with perfect aim into a tin can. "We got a problem," he says. You blink. "We?" He hands you a folded piece of paper. "This was posted on the church door this morning." You unfold it. It's handwritten, barely legible, scrawled in thick charcoal across scrap paper. "Justice is dead in widow's rest. By sunset, we take it back." You look up. That's ominous. Bell grunts, and poorly punctuated, but still, we think it's Cobb's doing. He's been stirring up old grudges lately. Miners versus ranchers, railroad men versus literally everyone. If things go sideways, I'll need boots on the ground. You try to protest that you're not exactly deputy material, but he cuts you off with a pointed look. "You've got eyes, you've got a gun, and you've got enough sense not to shoot yourself in the foot. That's better than most." So now you're law enforcement. Temporarily, unpaid, probably expendable. He tells you to keep an eye out around town and sends you off with a tin star that barely stays pinned to your shirt. You feel ridiculous, like a kid in a Halloween costume, only the candy is replaced with the chance of dying in a dramatic shootout. Your first stop is the saloon, naturally. People talk more freely when they're half drunk. Drunk and entirely nosy. You walk in and scan the room. It's more crowded than usual. A group of ranchers sits near the window, whispering over mugs. At the bar, a railroad man in dusty overalls drinks quietly, his boots vibrating with restless tapping. The piano is silent. Even the woman in the yellow dress from the other day looks subdued. You sidle up to the bar. The bartender, a wiry man named Griggs, grunts in greeting. "You're with the sheriff now?" "Apparently." He pours you something cloudy in a chipped glass. "Then you'll want to know this. Cobb's been talking about land, says the railroad paid off Bell to run the ranchers off. He's got folks believing it too." You sip the drink and immediately regret it. It tastes like apple cider if it were made by angry bees in a basement. "Is it true? And does it matter?" Griggs says. "Truth don't stand a chance against a good rumour in a town like this." You finish your drink and thank him. On your way out you hear a woman hiss, "Cobb's got men hiding in the old tannery." Make a mental note to check that later. Back at the general store, Mrs. Halloway meets your arrival with a scowl. "Why are people whispering about a war?" You sigh. "Because people love drama." "Well, if I see so much as a fist fight near my front door, I'm locking it and selling beans through the roof." You assure her you'll keep things calm. She snorts. That'll be a first for this town. Later that day you check out the old tannery. It's half collapsed, with the stench of rotten hides lingering in the air. Inside there's no one, but there are boot prints in the dust. Recent. You crouch down, examining them like some half-baked detective when you hear something behind you. Click. You freeze. "Don't move," says the voice. You slowly turn around to find yourself face to face with a teenager holding a double-barrel shotgun. He's scrawny, nervous, and aiming like someone who's seen too many dime novels. "You're one of Belle's, huh?" he says. "I'm one of nobody's," you reply carefully. "I'm just trying to keep this town from tearing itself apart." He hesitates, lowers the shotgun slightly. "They said Belle took bribes, that he let my uncle die for land." You shake your head. "I don't know what Belle did or didn't do, but I do know that starting a war won't fix it." He stares at you, then finally sets the shotgun down with a shaky sigh. "I don't want to shoot anybody. I just want folks to listen." You leave the tannery feeling like you've defused a tiny stick of dynamite. But you know the whole crate is still smouldering. Historical fact, the Wild West wasn't lawless, but it was messy. Many sheriffs and marshals did get paid off. By railroads, mine owners, saloon bosses. The line between justice and corruption blurred like desert heat. Fringe fact, there are recorded duels in which both men missed every single shot and then died from heatstroke while arguing about who technically won. The scholarly debate. How violent was the West, really? Some historians argue the shootouts and every corner trope is exaggerated. Others say violence wasn't constant, but when it happened, it was brutal. Oh, yeah. Brutal and personal. What's agreed on? Conflict came in waves, and rumour was often deadlier than a six-shooter. That night you sit in your loft, the tin star glinting faintly on the crate beside your bed. You're not a hero. You're barely qualified to be a sidekick. But somehow, you've become part of this town's story, and as the crickets chirp and the wind rustles the shutters, you realise something strange. You don't want to leave yet. You wake up with your revolver tucked awkwardly under your pillow and a crick in your neck that feels like it's trying to become permanent. Outside the window, Widow's Rest is already stirring. Horses clopping, chickens squawking, the town creaking back to life like an old man getting out of a rocking chair. You can hear voices from the street, low and wary, like everyone's expecting something to snap. And honestly, you are too. After splashing your face with water that might be colder than regret, you strap on your belt and the revolver that still feels uncomfortably natural. The sheriff told you to be present. That was his entire instruction. You're guessing it means walk around looking intimidating, which is hard to do when your boots are too big and your idea of conflict resolution comes from HR training videos. Still, you step into the street, squinting against the already harsh sun, and begin the daily patrol that no one officially assigned you. Mrs. Halloway gives you a nod as you pass the store. The blacksmith offers a silent glare and a puff of soot. The boy with the freckles is following you again, now chewing what looks like a stick of licorice like it owes him money. "What do you want?" you ask, not unkindly. "You ever seen a man get shot?" he replies, eyes bright. You pause. Why would you ask that? He shrugs. "Just wondering. Sheriff says there might be a fight soon. I heard Cobb's got 20 men with him, maybe more." You sigh. "You should go home. My ma says same thing. I told her if I die famous. Go home." He grins, spits out a piece of chewed licorice, and finally disappears into the alley behind the millinery. You stop by the saloon again, where tension hangs in the air like pipe smoke. The poker tables are mostly empty. The piano is silent. Even the lady in yellow's flirtation level has dropped from sultry menace to mildly concerned aunt. "You'll look like someone banned liquor," you mutter. Griggs, the bartender, snorts. "Feels like it. Cobb's boys came in last night, asked if they could store a few crates in the back. I told them no. They left in a hurry, but not before taking my cat. Why would they take a cat?" You frown. "Maybe they needed it for intimidation." He squints at you. "You're not very good at this, are you?" No, you're not. You leave the saloon and head toward the outskirts of town where the ranchers camp. You've heard rumours that some of them are planning to defend their land with rifles and dynamite if need be. As you approach, the smell of burnt coffee and sweaty leather hits you like a wall. A few men lounge near a fire, boots off, guns close. One of them, A thick-set man with a long scar down his jaw gives you a slow nod. "You with Belle?" he asks. "Sort of," you say. "Mostly, I'm trying to keep things from going full Shakespeare." He laughs once. "You talk weird. You're not from around here." You sit beside the fire. "Neither are most of you, I'm guessing." He nods. "Came from Kansas. Homesteader before the drought. Figured I'd try my luck out west. Turns out luck hates me." You sip from the tin cup of whatever's brewing on the fire and immediately regret it. Coffee in the Wild West tastes like it was filtered through an old sock filled with ashes. "We don't want to fight," he says, "but Cobb, he's been telling folks we're backed by the railroad, that we're stealing land, trying to drive everyone else out. Ain't true, but when someone says it loud enough, long enough, you nod. The problem with the Wild West isn't that it's lawless. It's that truth doesn't come with a badge. You leave the camp with a belly full of bad coffee and a mind spinning with worse possibilities. The sun's moving westward now, casting long shadows across Widow's Rest. The town feels like it's holding its breath, like everything is just waiting for someone to light the match. And then you see him, Jim Cobb, standing in front of the church, talking to a group of men like a preacher before a storm. He's dressed cleaner than usual, his duster almost new, his boots polished. His gun belt is heavy with ammunition, and he's holding your gaze like he's already decided how this ends. You cross the street, aware of every eye watching. "Cobb," you say, stopping a few feet away, and he smiles. "Deputy, or are you just playing dress-up today?" "We can still avoid this," he laughs. "Can we? Seems to me you've got maybe half a dozen people who'll stand with you, and I've got 50 who are tired of being lied to. We ain't attacking, we're reclaiming." You take a breath. You're going to get people killed. He steps closer. People die every day in this town. They die poor, forgotten, broken. Maybe today they die fighting for something. You want to say something clever, something that'll pierce the drama balloon he's inflating, but nothing comes. He tips his hat and walks away, disappearing into the crowd. Later you find Sheriff Bell in his office, loading a rifle with mechanical calm. "I heard," he says without looking at you. "How many's he got?" "Too many," you say. "More than us." Bell sighs. "Then we don't meet them with bullets, we meet them with strategy." "Got any?" He shrugs. "One or two." And that's how you find yourself an hour later moving barrels, setting up rope traps across the alleys, and handing a shotgun to a retired schoolteacher who claims she once fought off a bear with a rake. Historical fact. Towns like Widow's Rest often had their own mini-civil wars, ranchers versus farmers, miners versus lawmen, vigilantes versus corrupt officials. These weren't dramatic battles with orchestras and flags. They were grim, dusty, and often settled in silence and guilt. Fringe fact. There's a documented case where a town hired a bear as their unofficial night guard. They chained it near the jail, gave it a name, Judge Barlow, and fed it beer. It kept the peace better than most marshals. As for the scholarly debate, historians still argue whether the concept of justice in frontier towns was real or just a performance. Did sheriffs keep order, or just give people the illusion of control? Was peace maintained by law or fear? That night, Widow's Rest doesn't sleep. Lamps glow in every window, guns are checked and rechecked, and you, curled up in your scratchy loft, can't help but feel like the curtain's about to rise on something ugly. You roll over, staring at the revolver on your crate. You've got 6 shots and no backup. Tomorrow you might be a footnote in a forgotten legend. But for now, you sleep, because there's nothing else left to do. You wake to shouting, not the usual early morning heckling between neighbours or someone yelling about a missing goat, but urgent, sharp yelling, the kind that snatches sleep away mid-dream and leaves your body halfway to the door before your brain has caught up. You shove your boots on without socks, belt your revolver to your hip, and barrel down the stairs of the general store so fast you nearly trip over Mrs. Halloway's cat. She's not even mad, just mutters, "About time," as she tightens her apron and walks toward the window with a shotgun in hand like she's baking and preparing for war. Outside, the street is lined with bodies, alive ones for now, standing shoulder to shoulder like they're ready to either break into a hoedown or a bloodbath. People with rifles, pitchforks, frying pans, and one guy who showed up with a fencing foil, bless his heart. On the opposite end of the dusty main street, Jim Cobb and his growing posse are sauntering into town with that same theatrical confidence he always carries, like they've all practiced this entrance, and he's the lead in some frontier opera. And that's when you realise, this is it. No more rumours, no more vague threats. Today is the showdown. You find Sheriff Bell standing in the middle of the street, arms crossed, squinting into the sunlight like it personally offends him. "He's early," Bell mutters. "I was hoping he overslept," you reply. Bell sighs. He's the kind of man who gets up early just to argue with the sun. Cobb steps forward, his duster swaying, hat tilted like he's hoping to land on a postage stamp someday. He raises both hands, palms open, like some unholy priest. "Good people of Widow's Rest," he says, voice ringing across the street. "You've been lied to, exploited, taxed into starvation. Also the railroad and the sheriff could line their pockets." From behind you, someone scoffs. "What pockets? Sheriff still wears the same boots he stole off a dead guy 10 years ago." Cobb either doesn't hear or doesn't care. "But no more. Today we take our town back." There's scattered murmuring. A few of his people raise rifles, not at anyone yet. But the implication is clear. They came ready to shoot, even if they still pretend they didn't. Bell takes a step forward, hands also open. "No one's taking anything but a bullet if they fire first. I ain't paid off by the railroad, Cobb. Never was. And if you've got proof, now's the time to show it." Cobb smirks. "I don't need to paper to see the truth. Just look at who stands by you. Merchants, old folks, freeloaders. Where are the ranchers, the labourers?" And that's your cue. You turn and gesture toward the alley behind the store. From it slowly come a group of men and women, ranchers, railroad workers, even a few miners, faces grim but guns holstered. The silent majority showing up at the last second like they are auditioning for the town's salvation. They walk into the street and form a line behind Bell. The air tightens like a drumhead. Cobb's face twitches. He was hoping to break the town with words alone. Now he sees that won't be enough. "What happens next?" you whisper to Bell. He glances at you. Depends how dumb he is. Apparently very. Cobb draws. Fast, practiced, almost elegant. Bell draws too, slower but steady, and suddenly time stops. You watch Cobb's finger tighten, the flash of metal in the sun, the way his coat flutters like wings. Then the crack of a revolver splits the air. Not one shot, two. Everyone flinches. Cobb stumbles, not from Bell's shot. From yours. You don't remember deciding to fire. You just reacted, instinct screaming louder than thoughts. Your arms still raised, gun barrel smoking. Cobb's on one knee, clutching his thigh, fury in his eyes, like you just rewrote the final chapter of his favourite story. He doesn't get up. The people behind him waver, unsure. Then a rifle clatters to the ground, then another. And just like that, the charge fizzles out. Cobb is dragged away by two of his men, cursing and bleeding, defeated not by force but by embarrassment. You lower your gun slowly, your hand shaking. Sheriff Bell looks at you like he's seeing you for the first time. "Didn't know you had that in you," he mutters. "Neither did I," you say. "Also, I think I might throw up." The rest of the day passes in a haze. The town starts breathing again, like someone finally opened the windows on a house full of secrets. Bell takes Cobb's star off your chest, gently, almost respectfully, and tells you you're free to go back to your normal life, whatever that is. Mrs. Halloway gives you a silent nod and a plate of beans that might actually be warm this time. Even the boy with the freckles seems impressed. "I thought you'd shoot yourself in the foot," he says. "Me too," you reply. But here's the strange thing, after all that, you don't feel like a hero. You just feel tired. The kind of tired that seeps into your ribs and stays there, like this place wrung you out and put you back wrong. Here's your historical nugget of the night. Duels didn't always end in death. More often they ended with injury, humiliation, or a standoff that got interrupted by a cow walking between the fighters. But when shots were fired, it was rarely about accuracy. It was about intention. Drawing first meant more than hitting. Fringe fact: there's a documented case where a duel in Tombstone ended with both men missing every shot, agreeing it was too hot to continue, and going for drinks together instead. They became business partners. The scholarly debate here is murky. Were Western duels really about honour? Or were they just performative masculinity in its loudest, most dangerous form? Some say they kept social order. Others say they were just another way for men with poor impulse control to make headlines. You lie down that night with the revolver still beside you, and you wonder, what now? You've made enemies. You've gained some reluctant respect. You're not dead. but you're also not going home, because deep down a part of you is starting to realise you don't want to. The town is quiet the next morning, but it's not peace, it's exhaustion. Widow's Rest feels like it's been collectively holding its breath for days, and finally let it out in one long, wheezing exhale. Cobb's followers scattered sometime after sunset, leaving behind boot prints, cigarette butts, and a shattered window at the undertaker's shop. Sheriff Bell's limping slightly. Mrs. Halloway has a new dent in her door from where a bullet, fired in panic, not malice, ricocheted off the saloon sign and nearly took out her bean barrel. And you feel like you aged a decade overnight. When you finally drag yourself down the stairs, Mrs. Halloway slaps a mug of thick coffee into your hand with a muttered, "Still got 2 ears and all your teeth. Guess you didn't screw up too bad." That's about as close to a compliment as you'll get from her, and honestly it feels like a standing ovation. You spend most of the morning helping sweep up broken glass and hammer new boards across a few busted windows. Everyone's quieter than usual. Even the gossiping hens outside the sewing shop are subdued. There's no dramatic celebration, no parade, no rousing speech from the sheriff, just repairs. Life rolls on, that is, until the sheriff vanishes. It happens just before noon. Bell's usually a fixture on the main street, either lounging on the bench outside his office or arguing with the man who claims he invented beef jerky. But today, nothing. His office door is locked. The jail is empty. No one saw him leave, and his horse is still tied up behind the stables. You're not the only one who notices. By mid-afternoon, rumours are already rolling through town like tumbleweeds with teeth. Some say Cobb came back and kidnapped him. Others claim Bell took the payoff he swore he never got and rode out in the dead of night. One woman insists she saw him board a ghost train that only appears at sunrise and sunset, which you desperately hope is a metaphor and not another local legend you'll have to wrestle with. Mrs. Halloway corners you behind the store. "You've been close to him lately," she says, arms crossed. "You know anything?" You shake your head. "Not a clue. Last time I saw him, he handed me the badge and told me I was free." She narrows her eyes. People don't just vanish, not without leaving something behind. You end up volunteering, again to investigate. Mostly because no one else wants the job, and you've got that special outsider status that makes people nervous but also weirdly trustworthy. You start by checking the sheriff's office again, this time with a crowbar borrowed from the blacksmith. The lock pops, and you push the door open into dust-mote silence. The place looks normal, too normal. Chair slightly off-centre, half a coffee cup on the desk, yesterday's newspaper folded neatly under a six-shooter. You take a slow lap around the room, pausing at his desk. There's a map of the county pinned to the wall, dotted with pins and charcoal markings. You notice a note scrawled in the margin. "Old mine, abandoned, check before next full moon." Cryptic. Conveniently creepy. You pocket the note and head back out into the street, your mind racing. If Bell really did disappear voluntarily, why leave that clue? And if he didn't, well, why would anyone want to drag an ageing lawman into an old mine? Your next stop is the local livery, where the horses look just as judgmental as the people. The stable boy, a kid named Eli with straw-coloured hair and no filter, leans on his pitchfork and nods when you ask about Bell. "Saw him talking to someone last night?" "Yeah, I remember," Eli says. "Wasn't Cobb. Someone I didn't recognise. Tall, wore gloves, didn't talk much. Sheriff didn't look happy." "Did he ride off?" Eli shakes his head. "Nope. That's the weird part. Just walked off toward the hills, like he was going to meet someone or something." Your stomach tightens, because if there's one thing you've learned, it's that the desert around Widow's Rest isn't just empty. It's full of things people don't talk about in daylight. Still, curiosity or idiocy wins, and before long you're riding out of town on a borrowed horse named Biscuit. Biscuit does not like you. He shows this by attempting to walk sideways for no reason and stopping every 20 feet to eat something he definitely shouldn't. It's a long ride. By sunset, you're near the base of the low hills that flank Widow's Rest. The land here is brittle, dry as a dead man's humour, and littered with bones. Animal, you hope. The note said Old Mine. You find the entrance not far from a dry creek bed, a yawning hole in the rock framed by crumbling timbers and a broken sign that reads, "No entry without permission," in faded red paint. Classic. You dismount, tie Biscuit to a post that may or may not stay upright, and step inside. It's pitch dark within a few steps, so you light a match and use it to find an old lantern still hanging on a nail. The flame flickers to life, casting a golden glow over rotting support beams and ancient tracks half swallowed by dirt. You move slowly, the air thick with dust and that subtle, unplaceable feeling of being watched. Then you hear it. Low murmurs. Not words exactly, more like the cadence of a conversation just out of reach. You edge forward, one hand on your revolver, the other gripping the lantern. The path narrows, then widens into a cavernous chamber, where you finally see him. Sheriff Bell sitting on a rock bound at the wrists and glaring at a man in a long coat and gloves. The man turns slowly, revealing a face that's somehow too smooth, almost mannequin-like. He doesn't draw a weapon, he just smiles. "You weren't supposed to come here," he says. You raise your revolver. "And you weren't supposed to kidnap the sheriff." "I didn't. He followed me. He wanted to know." "Know what?" The man's smile widens. "Why this town keeps drawing in people who don't belong, like you, like him, like the others." Bell looks at you, grim-faced. "Don't listen to him. He's not from around here. Not anywhere." The man chuckles. "And yet here I am." You don't shoot. Not yet. You're too busy trying to process the fact that something about this man feels wrong, like gravity bends differently around him, like he's not real, or maybe too real. Historical fact. Abandoned mines were sometimes used for more than hiding treasure. They were hideouts, meeting places, even makeshift prisons for vigilantes who didn't want blood on the street. The perfect place for secrets. Fringe fact. There are legends of mine ghosts. Not spirits, but entities that lure people into the earth and keep them there. Dozens of miners went missing in the 1800s with no cave-ins, no signs of struggle. Some blamed gas, others blamed the earth taking back its own. And the scholarly debate. The vanishing lawman trope is common in frontier lore. Were these men running from failure or chasing something only they understood? Some believe they were victims of politics. Others say they simply saw too much and walked into the desert to find silence. You take a step closer, revolver steady. "Let the sheriff go. Now." The man only tilts his head, amused. Then very slowly he backs away into the shadows and disappears, like a puff of dust in the lantern light. You cut Bell's ropes and he groans, rubbing his wrists. "What the hell was that?" you ask. He shakes his head. "Something old, something this town's seen before." You help him to his feet, both of you limping toward the mine entrance, half waiting for that thing to return to whisper more riddles or worse. But the air stays still. Outside, Biscuit is still chewing something unidentifiable. At least one of you isn't disturbed. By the time you get back to town, the stars are out, the streets are quiet, and Widow's Rest has no idea what almost happened, or maybe what's still happening beneath its boots. And now, neither do you. You don't sleep that night. Not well, anyway. You try, you really do. You crawl into the itchy loft mattress, pull the scratchy blanket over yourself and close your eyes, but every time you start to drift off you see that man's face again. Or what passed for a face, the smoothness of it. Like a wax figure left too long in the sun, and his voice syrupy and casual like he wasn't tied to the laws of human speech. "You weren't supposed to come here." "Yeah, well, you weren't planning on it either, buddy." When morning finally arrives, you feel like a sack of sleep-deprived potatoes. You barely register the sounds of Widow's Rest coming to life again, the hammering of someone fixing a porch, the bray of a mule tied up at the blacksmith's, and Mrs. Halloway yelling at a customer for trying to buy a tin of pepper with squirrel bones. She sees you dragging your boots downstairs and eyes you carefully. You look like something that died on the tracks and then got denied entry to heaven. "Thanks," you mumble, accepting a tin cup of sludge-like coffee. "That's actually a step up from how I feel." She watches you drink. "Sheriff back?" You nod. "Yeah. Found him. He's fine, I think." She doesn't press. Maybe because she knows better. Or maybe because she senses there's more going on than just a weird man in a mine and a mysterious vanishing. And she's right. You don't tell her what the sheriff said on the ride back about others. "You're not the first," Bell had said. "You think you're just some fluke? Some accident in time?" He didn't explain. Just stared off at the horizon like it was keeping secrets. This town pulls people, always has, some stick, some don't. You think of the man with the too smooth face and how his presence warped the air around him. You think of your own sudden arrival, face down in the dirt, wearing boots you'd never owned, and a revolver that fit your hand like a memory you didn't make. Something strange is going on here. and it's way above your pay grade, or would be if you were getting paid. You finish your coffee, toss a wink at the customer still trying to make his squirrel bone currency happen, and step outside into the dusty brightness of day. The streets are quieter now. Everyone's feeling the aftershocks of yesterday's not-quite battle. No cob, no riot, just the strange, eerie normal of a town pretending nothing happened. You decide to head up the hill past the church, where the older folks tend to gather. It's less formal than a council and more like a porch gossip convention. Sure enough, you find 3 of them sipping tepid tea and watching the town like vultures with folding chairs. You heard the sheriff went missing, one of them says, not even waiting for you to speak. You heard he came back with a new tattoo and a glass eye, says another. You heard he died and was replaced by his twin brother from Missouri, offers the third. You smile politely. I heard he took a long walk and needed a break. Horse crap, says the first. He's seen something. Same thing others have. They always come back looking haunted. You lean on the fence. Others? He nods. People who show up out of nowhere. Say they're from back east or just passing through, but you can tell. They don't fit. They ask weird questions and then, poof, gone, or worse. You get a chill despite the heat. They're called, says the third old man, tapping his temple. Pulled here like magnets. This town ain't normal. Never was. They won't say more. Or maybe they don't know more. But it's enough to make your already paranoid brain start building theories like a mad scientist with a corkboard and too much string. You make your way down to the small graveyard behind the church. It's a quiet place, all crooked stones and wildflowers growing defiantly between the plots. You kneel to inspect a gravestone that looks newer than the rest. No name, just a crude carving. He didn't belong. Cool, super comforting. Then something catches your eye. A scrap of paper tucked under a rock at the foot of the grave. You unfold it carefully. The handwriting is sharp and tight, like it's trying not to be noticed. You've seen it now, the hollow man, don't let him in. You look around quickly, but there's no one in sight. The graveyard is empty, still you can't shake the feeling you're being watched. Again. You pocket the note and return to town, trying to look like a normal person on a normal walk instead of someone unravelling the fabric of reality one cryptic message at a time. Back at the general store, Mrs. Halloway meets your return with a raised eyebrow. You look spooked. You toss her the note. She reads it, snorts. Who's the hollow man? Sounds like a terrible whiskey, or a worse preacher. Not sure, you say, but I think I met him. She studies you for a beat, then folds the note and slips it into the pocket of her apron. Well, don't let him in then. Helpful. You spend the rest of the afternoon restocking tins and pretending you're not being slowly stalked by a supernatural entity that possibly eats time travellers. You avoid the saloon, too noisy. You avoid the church, too quiet. You think about leaving, but where would you even go? You don't belong anywhere anymore, except maybe here, in the town that shouldn't exist, playing a role you didn't audition for. Historical fact? The idea of ghost towns having dark secrets isn't just fiction. Some 9th century settlements were built near sacred native lands, mines that uncovered things best left buried, or even sites of ancient tragedy. Locals believed these places carried bad earth, cursed, poisoned, or otherwise wrong. Fringe fact? There are tales of entire towns vanishing, not just abandoned, but physically disappearing. The most famous of these is a mining town in Nevada, rumoured to have slipped through a wrinkle in time. The only thing ever found there again? A pair of boots with no feet inside. As for the scholarly debate, there's a long-standing discussion among historians and folklorists about the intersection of myth and memory in the Old West. Were strange stories simply ways to process harsh realities? Or were they the coded language of people who experienced things they couldn't explain? The sun sets blood-red that night. The shadows stretch longer than they should, creeping over the roofs and alleys of Widow's Rest like fingers. You lie awake in your loft, listening to the creak of the building, the moan of the wind, and a single, barely audible tap, tap, tap somewhere below. You grip your revolver. You don't sleep. You don't open the door. Not tonight. By dawn, you've finally drifted into something that might qualify as sleep, though it's more like a light sedation than actual rest. Your dreams are odd, floating down endless railroad tracks, always following a train you can hear but never see. Behind you, A man-shaped shadow keeps pace silently, his face smooth and unfinished, like the waxy prototype of a nightmare. You wake up with your heart racing and your revolver still clutched in your hand. It's Biscuit's braying that finally gets you out of bed. That stubborn horse has made himself quite at home in the town centre corral, and apparently has decided today is the day he voices his opinions. When you step out onto the general store porch, the town already feels off again. Not scared, not tense, just uneasy, like it's holding its breath for something it can't name. Freckles the kid is waiting by the post, chewing on a licorice stick and kicking a rock like he's interrogating it. "There's trouble out at Dust Creek," he says before you even ask. "Old man Runnels came running into town saying there's bandits. Said they was digging up something, not robbing wagons, just digging." Freckles shrugs. "Said it wasn't gold," said it smelled like the inside of a burnt coffin. Charming. You grab your hat, make sure your revolver is loaded, and saddle Biscuit, who bites your sleeve and then immediately plays innocent. The ride out to Dust Creek takes a couple of hours, and the sun is already baking the dirt into cracked stone by the time you get there. You pass through a low canyon, its walls lined with scraggly bushes and old hand-carved trail signs. The land around you starts to shift, less like desert, more like something scraped clean by time. You spot odd indentations in the rock, too, even to be natural, too ancient to make sense. Then, as you crest the last ridge, you see them. 5 men dressed like they fell out of a dime novel, dusters, bandanas, wide-brimmed hats. But they're not holding up a coach or cooking over a fire. They're clustered around a pit, 10 feet wide and just as deep, digging with shovels and pickaxes in dead silence. No one's talking, no one's yelling, just the rhythmic thunk of metal on dirt. A smell hits you as the wind shifts, sweet and sour, like overripe fruit and rot. You pull back behind a rock and watch. One of the men climbs out of the hole, brushing dust from his coat. His face is wrong. Not Hollow Man wrong, just off. Like someone wore his own features too long and they've started to slide. His eyes are sunken, his skin papery and drawn tight, his mouth slightly open in a frozen half smile. You'd say he looked dead, but he's moving just fine, and then one of them finds something. There's a yell, sharp, not quite human. The others gather around as one of them hauls something out of the pit. You can't see what it is at first, just that it's long, wrapped in faded leather, and radiating a sickly shimmer, like heat haze, but colder. You step forward for a better look and accidentally kick a pebble. It bounces down the ridge. Every head turns, they see you see them, and then they start running, not at you, away, back toward the hills, carrying the strange object with them. You draw your revolver and fire a warning shot into the air, but they don't flinch. They disappear into the rocks like rats into a cellar. You slide down into the pit, heart pounding. The hole is deeper than it looked, walls slick with clay and packed stone. At the bottom you find what they didn't take, scraps of cloth, bones, old bones, and symbols etched into the dirt. Circles and lines that don't match any language you know, but definitely don't feel like good news. You pocket a piece of parchment that looks like it was half buried with the rest. It's stiff-stained and written in a handwriting that jerks across the page like the writer was shaking. It reads, "We buried it here to keep them from calling again. Do not remove it. The price was already too high." You don't know what it was, but clearly someone does, and now it's out in the world again. Fantastic. By the time you get back to town, your clothes are coated in red clay, and your head's buzzing like a kicked beehive. Sheriff Bell is waiting for you outside his office, arms crossed, a fresh cut on his cheek. "You heard, you ask?" He nods. "Runnels came in yelling. Folks are saying you found a ghost tomb." "Not far off," you mutter, handing him the parchment. He reads it, frowns, then folds it and tucks it into his coat. "This town," he says, almost to himself, "was never meant to last. We all pretend it's a stop on the road to something better, but I think we're the last station." You spend the rest of the day trying not to unravel mentally. At the general store, Mrs. Halloway lets you scrub off the dirt with a bar of lye soap that burns your skin but gets the smell of Dust Creek off. You help a customer pick out flour. You restock the shelves. You try to pretend you didn't watch the use were, dig up an ancient warning and run off like they were late for a séance. You can't shake the feeling that something's shifting beneath the town, like it's been waiting for years for someone to crack open the wrong place, and now you've done it. Historical fact. Bone pickers were a real thing. Scavengers who dug up old graveyards during droughts or panics, looking for artefacts, jewellery, or bones to sell to universities and collectors. Most of them didn't care whose graves they desecrated. Fringe fact? There are legends about cursed burial sites across the southwest, places where things weren't just buried but sealed. Not to honour the dead, but to trap them. Some sites were said to whistle in the wind, or change location when you weren't looking. And the scholarly debate, were tales of cursed mines and haunted pits just metaphors for the destruction of native lands and sacred places? Or was there a kernel of truth buried under all that dust? Academics argue whether the strange artefacts and symbols found in old mining journals were the results of fevered mines, or genuine encounters with something ancient. That night you sit on the porch outside the general store, watching the moon rise over the hills. You don't light a lamp, you just sit there in the dark, revolver across your lap, waiting to see if anyone or anything comes back with that thing they dug up. The town sleeps, you don't. And somewhere out past the ridge, something hums softly in the dirt. Morning arrives the way it always does in Widow's Rest, reluctantly with a sun that feels more like punishment than promise. You're still sitting on the porch now with stiff joints and a neck that sounds like dry twigs every time you move. You didn't sleep, not really. At some point you may have blinked longer than usual, but your hand never left your revolver. The town never stirred. And whatever was humming out past the ridge kept its distance, like it was content to let you stew in your own worry. Mrs. Halloway steps outside just after dawn, carrying a steaming tin mug and an expression that suggests she already regrets speaking to you. She hands you the mug and says, "You look like the ghost of laundry day." You nod, take a sip. It's not coffee so much as heated bitterness, but it does the trick. She leans against the railing beside you. People are asking questions. You raise an eyebrow. What kind of questions? The kind that start with, "Why does our part-time shopkeep keep getting mixed up in the town's nightmares?" and end with, "Is he cursed or just very unlucky?" You sigh. I'd say a little of both. She glances sideways at you. "You going to tell me what you saw out there?" You tell her. About the men, if they were men. About the pit and the smell and the thing they pulled out. About the symbols and the warning scrawled in frantic script. You don't mention the faces. You're not sure you can describe them without unravelling a little more. When you finish, she's quiet. Then she mutters, "You need a bath." Is that a commentary on my spiritual energy or my smell? Both. You bathe. You change. You eat a plate of cornbread that's probably older than some buildings in town. And just when you're thinking you might have a quiet morning, Sheriff Diablo Bell shows up at the general store, looking like a man who's aged 5 years overnight. He pulls you aside. The object's been spotted. That gets your attention. Spotted where? 2 towns over, he says. Place called Hollow Creek. Prospector rode in this morning, talking about some travelling preacher with a relic. Says it glows in the dark and makes animals go quiet when it's near. He's calling it a holy beacon. Claims it speaks to him. You blink. Well, that's not great. Nope. You and Bell saddle up. Biscuit, to his credit, only tries to throw you once. Bell's horse, an old mare named Widowmaker, looks at you like she's seen this story before and already knows it ends badly. The ride to Hollow Creek is long and hot. You pass dry riverbeds, skeletal trees, and vultures who look deeply annoyed they haven't gotten to snack on you yet. Bell is quiet most of the way, but at one point he says, "You ever wonder why you're here?" You chuckle. "Every waking moment." "I mean not just the town, I mean here. Now, like this." You don't know how to answer, so you don't. Hollow Creek turns out to be even smaller than Widow's Rest, if you can believe it. Half the buildings are leaning like they have had enough of gravity. The main street is a slow parade of heat ripples and suspicious glances. You pull up outside the saloon, and within 5 minutes everyone in town knows your names and what colour your socks probably are. Bell talks to the local sheriff, an old man with one eye and a prosthetic hand who calls himself Sheriff once again, which he never explains. Meanwhile, you head toward the church where the so-called preacher is said to be holding court. The building is dim, lit by a few candles and the afternoon sun filtering through warped, stained glass. You step inside and see him immediately. Tall, clean-shaven, dressed in crisp black robes that don't match the dust of the road. And beside him, resting on a small table covered in red cloth, is the object. It's wrapped in leather, just like before, but partially uncoiled. It's not a weapon. Not really. It's a horn, or a piece of one. Polished, dark, spiraled, it hums faintly, as if tuned to a frequency just below your brain's comfort level. The preacher is speaking, his voice smooth and melodic. This relic, he says, is a sign, a gift from the earth herself, a signal that the time of judgment is close, that the gates are shifting. You catch snippets as you edge closer. A crack in the veil, the hollow shepherd, a return of the lost city. You've heard this kind of talk before, usually from people selling tinctures or living too close to mercury mines, but this man's eyes are sharp, focused, and the people around him aren't drunk or desperate. They're listening. You approach him. Where'd you get it? He smiles, all teeth. It was given. By whom? The hollow. You glance at the horn. You know what it really is. He steps closer, lowering his voice. Do you? And that's when he tries to give it to you. It wants you, he says, holding it out. It called you, didn't it? That's why you came. You don't touch it. You're not scared, or at least not that stupid. Bell steps in then, gun drawn. Step away from him. The preacher raises his hands. Violence isn't necessary. But Bell's already grabbing the horn, wrapping it in a saddlecloth and backing toward the door. You've done enough preaching for one day. As you ride away from Hollow Creek, horn in tow, the sun begins to sink. You keep glancing at your saddlebag, half expecting it to burst into flames or start whispering your name. But it just sits there, quiet and heavy. Too heavy for something so small. Historical fact. Travelling preachers in the Old West were often revered, or feared. Known as circuit riders, they brought both salvation and suspicion, especially when their sermons turned apocalyptic. Many claimed to have visions, miracles, even objects sent by divine hands. Fringe fact, several 19th century religious cults revolved around strange artefacts discovered in the desert. One such group believed they had found a horn from an angel's trumpet, capable of opening the gates of heaven or hell. The cult disappeared in 1874. No trace was ever found. Scholarly debate. Do these frontier legends stem from spiritual hysteria? Or were they responses to something deeper? Collective trauma? Psychological echoes of stolen land and spiritual displacement? Or was something truly calling? Back in Widow's Rest, you lock the horn in the sheriff's jail, behind 3 sets of bars and a heavy chain. Then you sit outside with Bell, watching the night creep in. Neither of you speaks for a long time. Then Bell says, "It's waking something. I can feel it." You nod. So can you. You wake to the sound of a train whistle. At first you think it's part of a dream, maybe another weird loop where you're chasing locomotives through endless dust. But then you sit up and realise it's real. The long, low wail echoes across the valley is like a creature's last breath. Only one problem. The train's not supposed to run today. It's not even on the schedule. The nearest working track is 3 miles west, and the last time a train came through Widow's Rest, half the town showed up like it was a royal visit. This whistle, though, feels quieter. Not inviting, more like a warning. By the time you throw on your shirt, boots and gun belt, the general store is already buzzing. Mrs. Halloway is stacking cans faster than usual, her mouth drawn into a tight line. "You hear it?" she asks without looking up. "I did." "Good. Then you can go see what it is, so I don't have to hear 3 dozen conflicting theories while I'm selling sugar and socks." Freckles is waiting outside, mad of course, because if there's trouble to sniff out, that kid's nose is better than a bloodhound's. "Train came in from the North Line," he says, walking beside you without asking. "Old one. Didn't stop, just rolled through and kept going, except it didn't have an engineer, or passengers." You look down at him. "How do you know it didn't have passengers?" "The window was open. I threw a rock. It went straight through." "That's okay. You'll file that under extremely concerning but not immediately actionable." You walk down to the edge of town where the tracks used to run before they were deemed too dangerous to maintain. Most of them are rusted or warped from years of desert heat. But there, cutting across the plain like an old scar, is a single pair of fresh tracks. Not new, but used. And off in the distance, already vanishing into the horizon, is a train. A single black iron snake slipping away without steam, without noise, without anything but that echo of a whistle still ringing in your chest. You spot Sheriff Bell crouched near the track, one hand pressed to the rail. He doesn't look up when you approach. "Feel that? You touch the metal. It's warm. Buzzing, actually. Like it's still alive. "Ghost train, you ask?" Bell shakes his head. "Worse. Memory." Okay, I don't like that. He pulls something from his coat, a folded sheet of parchment. I found this nailed to the jailhouse door this morning. You open it. Same handwriting as the warning in the graveyard. Same tight, shaking script. The horn calls the train calls the gate. You've already crossed the first. You stare at it, the pit in your stomach deepening. Gate, you ask? Belle finally looks at you. I think they mean between here and somewhere else. Like another town? No, he says. Like another place. That word hits differently now. It's one thing to suspect weirdness. It's another to have it pointed at you with chilling clarity. You walk in silence back toward town, the whistle still echoing inside your skull. Behind you, the tracks sit empty again, baking quietly under the morning sun. Later that day, a stranger arrives. No one sees where he came from. No horse, no cart, just a man in a dark coat walking up the main road with dust trailing behind him like a shadow that can't decide where to settle. He's tall, clean, too clean for someone who supposedly walked through the desert. His boots don't even look scuffed. You step out of the store as he passes. Afternoon, you offer. He pauses, his head turns slowly toward you. His face is plain, average to the point of forgettable, but his eyes are too still, like they're painted on. I'm looking for a package, he says, something that was recently recovered from a burial site outside Dust Creek. You already know what he means. Your hand hovers near your holster. You with the preacher? He smiles faintly. Not with anyone. I just collect things. Well, you say, I think this collection's closed. His smile stays frozen in place. No, he replies. It's just beginning. You watch him continue up the road toward the sheriff's office. You follow. Belle is standing behind the desk, arms folded. The horn sits on a shelf behind him, still wrapped in cloth, though the edges of it have started to glow faintly, like embers under ash. The stranger walks in and doesn't hesitate. That item belongs to my employer. Belle doesn't blink. He'll need to file a claim then. The man's smile fades. It doesn't work like that. You're right, you say from the doorway. Here, we use laws, not veiled threats and spooky walk-ins. The man turns to you, tilting his head slightly. You're not from here, he says, like it's not a question. Belle snorts. Neither's half the town. So what? The man steps forward, and for just a second you swear the light dims around him. Not visibly, not in any way you can prove, but in that subtle gut-feeling way, like your stomach suddenly knows something your brain doesn't. He places one gloved hand on the desk. You can't keep it, he says. You've invited it now. Belle reaches for his rifle. You draw your revolver. The man doesn't flinch. He simply nods once and walks out. Outside, you expect him to keep walking down the road, but he doesn't. He turns, steps between two buildings, and vanishes. You run after him, round the corner, and there's nothing. No footprints, no trace, just the breeze and the sun and the sense that something is shifting. That night, you and Belle move the horn. Not far, just outside of town, buried under a rock pile near the church. You don't know what good it'll do, but you can't keep it locked up in plain sight anymore. And you sure as hell aren't handing it over to some polite ghoul in a pressed coat. Back in your loft, you stare at the ceiling, listening to every creak and whisper. You're tired of trying to make sense of things. The hollow man, the horn, the train, the gate, the man who disappears like a smoke ring in sunlight. None of it fits into a neat narrative. Historical fact? Some frontier towns did have unexpected train arrivals, usually unauthorized freight runs or old lines being reused in secret for smuggling. But there are reports, fringe ones, of trains with no crew, arriving on the air tracks, carrying crates no one could open. Fringe fact? A preacher once claimed that an ancient horn, when blown at the right time, could summon a train that didn't belong to this world. He called it the Midnight Line. No tracks, no timetable, just a ride to something final. The preacher vanished. The horn was never found. Scholarly debate? The ghost train legend is often dismissed as folklore mixed with trauma, stories told by old men drunk on desert wind and regret. But some insist these legends began long before railroads ever existed. That trains were just the modern face of something older, something moving. You roll over and try to sleep. In your dream, the train is closer. and the horn is louder. You wake before sunrise this time, not because of nightmares or strange noises, but because of the silence. Thick, heavy, unnatural silence. Widow's Rest is never this quiet. Even in the dead of night there's always something. The creak of wind over warped wood, the occasional coyote wail, the snore of a drunk miner face down in the street. But now, nothing. Like the town's been buried under a glass dome. You sit up slowly, the blanket tangled around your legs, and for a few minutes you just listen. No hoofbeats, no birds, not even Biscuit's morning bray of protest. It feels like the world forgot to hit play this morning. You grab your revolver without thinking, strap it on, and step outside onto the general store's porch. The sky is still dark violet, with a pale streak of dawn trying to force its way in. Lamps flicker low in a few windows, but not a soul stirs. Even the air feels thinner, like the town's holding its breath again, and this time you're pretty sure it's not going to exhale. The first real sign of trouble comes from the east end of town, where the church bell suddenly tolls. Once, just once, low and warbled, like it's being rung by a ghost with shaky hands. You spin toward the sound, your boots crunching the gravel as you start jogging. When you reach the church, the doors are wide open. That in itself is strange enough. Reverend Bixby is fanatical about punctuality and locks, and it's not Sunday. You call out his name but get no answer. You step inside, eyes adjusting to the gloom, and that's when you see it. Someone's rearranged the pews. They are no longer in neat rows but dragged into a wide circle around the pulpit, their legs digging gouges into the floorboards. On the pulpit itself, a single candle burns, its flame disturbingly still. Beneath it sits a chunk of leather-wrapped something pressed down by a horseshoe. And painted around it, in tar or maybe something much worse, is a perfect ring of symbols, the same ones you saw etched in the dirt at Dust Creek. Your stomach drops. No, you mutter. No, no, no. Because the horn is supposed to be buried. You help bury it yourself, under rocks so heavy it took you and Belle both to roll them. You reach out slowly toward the object, and then stop. The air around it vibrates. It doesn't hum this time. It growls, low, steady, and just quiet enough that you're not even sure you're hearing it with your ears. You back away, heart pounding, revolver suddenly useless in your holster. Someone brought it back, or something dug it up. Either way, it didn't want to stay hidden. You sprint to the sheriff's office, burst through the door to find Belle already up, already armed and already mad. They left it in the church, you say, breathless. He doesn't ask what it is. He already knows. Damn it, he mutters. I told you we should have buried it further out. We needed a mule, you fire back. You said Biscuit was too precious to risk on cursed business. He doesn't deny it. Instead, he grabs his rifle and tosses you a satchel of ammo. If someone's playing games, they're about to find out how good we are at flipping the board. You ride out town together. Not toward Dust Creek this time, but toward Saddle Rock, the nearby ghost town that everyone avoids like it's contagious. Not just abandoned, but left behind. The kind of place people don't speak of without a drink in hand and a crucifix nearby. Belle says he got a note yesterday, anonymous, just a single line. If you want to understand what's coming, follow the tracks to Saddle Rock. Biscuit protests the ride every 10 minutes, as usual. But Belle's horse, Widowmaker, charges ahead like she's got a death wish. You find the first stretch of broken rail an hour later, half buried in the sand. It shouldn't even be here. Saddle Rock was never on a line, but the tracks curve across the plain like a scar that's recently started bleeding again. You follow them. The closer you get to the ghost town, the more you feel it. That cold pressure in your chest, like something heavy is settling on your ribs. Saddle Rock rises out of the heat mirage slowly. Splintered buildings, sagging rooftops, one half-collapsed clock tower leaning like it's drunk. The wind is wrong here. It doesn't blow, it hovers, and it smells, not like rot, not like decay, like a copper and dust and remembering. Belle dismounts first. You follow, stepping over the boards that groan underfoot even though they shouldn't be that brittle. You enter what used to be a saloon, its doors barely hanging on. Inside, tables are overturned, chairs smashed, glass still on the floor, but no sign of violence. Just chaos, like the town left in a hurry. Then you see it. etched into the far wall behind the bar. The gate is opening. The letters are scorched into the wood, and beneath it someone has scrawled in smaller script, "Midnight train to nowhere." That phrase again. You and Belle search the town building by building. The general store is empty, but there's a ledger on the counter filled with entries that don't make sense. Dates written backward, purchases that are just numbers, and a signature that's just a spiral. In the church, because every ghost town apparently needs one, you find rows of empty pews all facing away from the altar, and nailed to the altar itself is a newspaper clipping. You pull it off and read, July 2nd, 1859. Entire population of Saddle Rock disappears overnight. Locals say the land turned sour, only the clock tower remained functional, no bodies ever found. Bell runs a hand through his greying hair. I've read about this town, he says. Always thought it was folklore, but this, you stare at the tracks cutting through the centre of town. They weren't here before, you whisper. Nope, Bell says, which means someone or something is laying them now. And then you hear it. That whistle again. Distant. Chilling. You turn toward the hills. A thin line of smoke rises against the sunset, black and slow and wrong. The train is coming, and you're not sure if it's going to stop this time, or take all of you with it. Historical fact, Saddle Rock isn't real, at least not by name, but several Old West towns did vanish under mysterious circumstances. Drought, plague, gold busts, sure, but in some cases no record was left, no explanation, just stories passed from mouth to mouth about lights in the hills and whispers that made men go mad. Fringe fact? In 1871, a railroad foreman claimed to see a train arrive on tracks he never laid. It pulled into a non-existent station, opened its doors to nobody, and sat silently for 15 minutes. Then it rolled away, leaving only scorched grass and an overwhelming sense of dread. And the scholarly debate? Time and place in the frontier weren't always stable, at least in legend. Some believe there are thin places in the desert, cracks in the timeline where things slip through. Echoes, shadows, warnings. You leave Saddle Rock just before dark, racing the sun, but you know it's not just nightfall you're out running. It's the train. You barely sleep again, which is starting to become your brand right alongside accidental lawman, part-time relic hunter, and now, apparently, unpaid harbinger of doom. Your dreams, when they do come, are full of clicking tracks and hollow voices. You're standing on a station platform that doesn't exist, watching your own shadow board a train and leave you behind. You wake up tangled in the sheets, sweating through your shirt, and with the taste of copper in your mouth. That last part worries you more than anything. You step outside into the first dull blush of morning. Widow's Rest is already moving, but the energy feels wary. The kind of mood a town gets when people have seen just enough weird to start believing all the stories they used to laugh at. Folks give you a little more space on the boardwalk. No one meets your eyes for too long. Even the boy with the freckles seems subdued, sitting outside the barber shop trying to tie knots in a piece of string that looks suspiciously like it came from a noose. You give him a nod, and he returns it with a look that says, "We're all in it now, huh?" You don't need to reply, and he already knows. Sheriff Bell finds you on your second cup of coffee behind Halloway's, stirring the grounds like it owes you answers. He's holding a folded note, already yellowing at the edges. "This was left under the jail door," he says. "Again?" You take it, unfold it. Same jagged handwriting, different message. The rails lead west, the cattle trail is next. When the herd moves, the gate swings wide. You stare at it, then back at him. Cattle trail? You mean the drive? He nods. Dusty Ben and his crew left yesterday. 30 head of Longhorn heading west through Red Valley Pass. You finish your coffee. Guess we're joining a cattle drive. You borrow horses again, because what else is new, and ride out before noon. The sun's a beast today, bearing down with relentless heat that turns the trail into a shimmering mirage. The pass cuts through the rocky hills in a narrow path barely wide enough for the herd. The perfect funnel, the perfect place for something unnatural to happen. You catch up to the herd just before dusk. The Longhorns are restless, bleating and pawing the dirt. A low wind has picked up, dry and warm like the breath of something enormous. Dusty Ben, who is impressively both dusty and named Ben, rides up to greet you. "Well, look who the desert dragged in," he says, squinting at you with one good eye. "Heard you two been stirring up talk of devils and ghost trains." "You heard right," Bell mutters. Ben spits into the dirt and glances at the sky. "Figures. A cow's been acting like they're sniffing thunder. And I ain't seen a cloud in days. Last night they stampeded in circles. No reason, like they was running from something they couldn't see. You ride alongside the herd for a while, watching them twitch and bellow. Even the cowboys look spooked. One of them swears he saw a figure walking alongside the herd last night, matching their pace, never making a sound. Could have been a shadow, he says, or a bad one. Bad one, you ask. He doesn't explain, just tips his hat and rides ahead. As the sun sinks lower, the pass tightens. The walls of the canyon close in on both sides, jagged and wind-carved, casting long, unnatural shadows. You start to hear a sound in the distance, low and steady, like wheels on track. It's faint, barely more than a hum, but it's there, and it's getting louder. The cattle panic first. One of them bellows so loudly it echoes through the pass like a warning shot. Then another rears up, kicking and thrashing. Suddenly the whole herd surges forward, charging blindly down the trail. Cowboys shout, crack whips and chase them, but it's no use. The cattle are running from something. You just don't know what yet. Then you hear the whistle. Not loud, not even close, but it shouldn't be here. You pull up your horse, spinning toward the sound, and there, above the canyon wall, you see it. A train gliding across the ridge. No tracks, no steam, just floating, moving. Its cars are long, black, windowless, its wheels turn but they don't touch anything. And from this distance it's silent, but you feel it. The vibration in your chest, the static prickle behind your eyes. It's like the world is being stretched thin just by its presence. You shout for Bell. He's already seen it. He's already drawing his rifle. But then the train turns. Not the cars, the whole train. Like a snake when changing course, it angles down toward the pass. No, you mutter, that's not possible. And then it vanishes. Gone. No noise, no crash, no wind. Just gone. The cattle finally stop running. They mill nervously in a clearing beyond the pass, kicking up dust and confusion. One lies down, trembling, eyes wide. A cowboy checks his watch and mutters, 5 minutes late. You ask what he means, but he won't say more. You and Bell dismount, walking to the base of the pass. That's where you find it. Tracks, fresh ones, embedded in the dust and gravel. 2 perfect lines of parallel steel that weren't there an hour ago. They run from the top of the ridge into the heart of the pass and then simply end. No start, no finish, just there. Bell crouches and touches them. Still warm. You look back toward the herd. The cowboys are quiet now, gathered in small clumps. One of them prays. Another drinks straight from a bottle of something that smells like varnish. No one laughs. No one speaks above a whisper. You don't sleep that night either. You camp under the stars, rifle on your chest, back to a rock wall that still feels like it might collapse inward. Bell watches the tracks like they might get up and walk off, and you lie there staring into the dark, remembering the preacher's words. The horn calls the train calls the gate. You wonder what's behind that gate, and if you'll have a choice about walking through it. Historical fact. Cattle drives were full of danger, floods, rustlers, storms, but spooked herds were among the worst. A single startled cow could send hundreds into a frenzy. Entire towns were flattened by rogue stampedes. Fringe fact, there are accounts, rare, hushed, of herds vanishing. Whole drives that never made it to market. Cowboys returning alone, raving about things with whistles and iron monsters walking the sky. Most were dismissed as dehydration and desert madness. Scholarly debate. Could early frontier hallucinations caused by heat, isolation, starvation explain the roots of Wild West folklore? Or were these experiences something else? Some say they were merely metaphors. Others believe they were attempts to describe the indescribable, things outside the timeline. You lie still, listening to the wind, but it doesn't sound like wind anymore. It sounds like a train coming from nowhere and heading straight for you, and you wake up choking on smoke. Subtle at first, just the faint acrid tingle at the back of your throat. But then the wind shifts, and the world smells like a campfire that's gotten wildly out of hand. You sit bolt upright, coughing, blinking through the haze. The stars above are blurred, and the horizon behind you glows an ugly orange. Fire. A big one. Too close. Bell is already on his feet, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes locked toward the ridgeline. Red Rock Canyon, he says grimly. It's burning. You scramble up onto a rock for a better look, and there it is, an inferno crawling over the hills, glowing like a second sunrise. The flames eat the dry scrub with terrifying speed, casting long, flickering shadows that dance like panicked figures. The herd is already agitated, hooves clattering, longhorns bellowing in chaotic rhythm. Cowboys run back and forth, shouting, waving hats, trying to keep the animals from stampeding straight into the fire, or worse, off a cliff. You leap into the fray without thinking. You and Belle help drive the herd westward, away from the canyon, trying to guide them down the safer slope into the riverbed below. Biscuit, grumpy as ever, proves his worth by refusing to spook, even when smoke thickens and horses start bolting. You use him like a living barricade, corralling the panicking longhorns as the wind whips the smoke harder and faster into your eyes. By the time the last of the herd clears the slope, you're coughing so hard it feels like your ribs are trying to escape. Belle slaps your back once, not gently, and hands you a kerchief soaked in water. You hold it to your mouth as you turn to face the blaze. Red Rock Canyon is being devoured. And not in the normal, this happens sometimes during dry season way. The fire moves wrong. It doesn't leap from tree to tree, it slithers, crawls, dances in patterns that feel intentional. You watch one line of flame curve into a perfect spiral before licking its way up a boulder and exploding into a pillar of sparks. "This ain't natural," Belle mutters. "No lightning, no camps, just fire." And then, through the smoke, you see it. The train, again, but this time it's not above the canyon or disappearing into the distance, it's in the fire. Its black shape moves through the flames untouched, carving a path like molten shadow. The cars are longer now, 10, maybe 12, each one a perfect, silent monolith. No wheels turning, no smoke from the engine, just movement, just presence. And then it stops. It stops. Right in the centre of the burning canyon, on no tracks at all. The fire parts around it like water around a ship. And from inside the lead car, a door opens. Something steps out. You don't know how to describe it. It's tall, dressed like a man, but every inch of it is wrong. It wears a black suit that doesn't wrinkle, doesn't move. Its face is just a blur, not a blur from distance. A blur like it refuses to resolve into anything human. Your eyes try to find features and just can't. It stands there, silhouetted against a wall of fire, and slowly raises one arm. The ground beneath you shakes. The canyon wall cracks. And then, with a roar like a scream being swallowed, half the ridge collapses in a cascade of rock and flame. The figure vanishes in the chaos. The train too, gone again, as if it was never there. You and Belle duck behind boulders, shielding your faces as ash rains down like dirty snow. The wind howls, trees burst apart like matchsticks. Somewhere behind you a cowboy screams, cut off mid-cry. You'll never know if it was the fire or the rocks or something else entirely. When the smoke finally begins to lift, the fire has receded. Not died, retreated, as if it only came to make a point. The path through the canyon is now completely blocked by debris. A line of blackened earth where the fire danced remains visible for a few seconds before fading, like something exhaling its last breath. Belle crouches beside a scorched patch of ground and runs his fingers through the ash. "Not even warm," he says. "Should be hotter than hell, but it's cold." You want to answer, say something clever, but your throat is raw, your mind worse, and your boots feel like they're full of soot and dread. Back in Widow's Rest by mid-afternoon, the smoke's already reached the edge of town. People stare at the sky like they expect brimstone. Kids huddle close to their parents. Even Mrs. Halloway closes the store early. A move so rare it's practically a declaration of war. You sit on the general store porch, shirt stained with sweat and ash, eyes fixed on the hills. Belle joins you, lighting a cigar with hands that don't quite stop shaking. "What do we do now?" you ask. He exhales slowly. "We prepare." "For what?" He doesn't answer right away. Then finally, "For the gate." You rest your head against the wall behind you, letting the cool wood soak some of the heat from your skull. Historical fact: wildfires were a constant threat in the frontier. With no organised fire departments, a single spark could wipe out entire towns. Most were natural, lightning strikes, dry brush, but a few were suspected to be sabotage or even something else. Fringe fact: some old mining camps tell stories of fires that burned cold, flames that didn't consume wood or flesh, but memory. Whole sections of journals found intact, except with pages missing, only what happened during the fire, as if the flame ate truth itself. Scholarly debate? There's ongoing discussion about psychogeographic events, strange phenomena that alter the land and the mind simultaneously. Some theorize locations can remember trauma, or even act on it, that the land can become a participant in a story it didn't choose. That night, the blue sky glows faint red until well after midnight. Not from fire anymore, just from something. You lie awake, the horn still buried, the train still out there, and the gate, whatever it is, growing closer. And now, for the first time, you start to wonder if Widow's Rest isn't just a stop on the line. Maybe it's the last station. By morning, the ash is everywhere. It's in your boots, your teeth, your pillow. It dusts the storefronts like bitter snow and clings to the horses' coats in grey streaks. Widow's Rest looks like a town stuck between seasons, summer heat still clinging to the earth, but winter's ghost already smearing itself across the buildings. The townsfolk don't speak much today. They just sweep, spit and side-eye the hills. Even Biscuit, usually as expressive as a toddler with a sugar addiction, just stands still in his stall, staring off toward the horizon like he's remembering something he'd rather forget. You've given up on pretending this is normal, or explainable. You've stopped cataloguing every strange thing in your head, stopped filing it under unresolved or probably hallucinated. You've run out of plausible boxes. Now there's just real and real enough. Belle finds you around midday. You're fixing the general store's warped porch board, trying not to think about the horn or the fire or the train that doesn't need tracks. "Come with me," he says. "There's someone I want you to meet." You don't ask questions anymore. You just grab your hat and go. He leads you out to the northern edge of town, past the last fences, to a weather-beaten shack nestled under the skeleton of a dead cottonwood. The kind of place people walk around, not past. There's a circle of dried tobacco leaves on the doorstep, a row of rusty horseshoes nailed in a spiral to the roof. You'd call it eccentric if it didn't reek of warning. Belle knocks twice, then once more, then steps back. The door creaks open to reveal a woman in her 70s, wearing a dress that might have once been black but now lives somewhere between soot and shadow. Her grey hair is braided into loops, and her eyes are the sharpest thing in sight. "This the one?" she asks, looking you up and down. Belle nods. "He's the only one." She snorts. Figures, the gate always picks the lost ones. She introduces herself as Magda, but everyone calls her Bones. You don't ask why. Some questions feel like they come with a price tag. Inside her cabin, the air is thick with herbs and something that smells like hot copper. The walls are covered in maps, hand-drawn, marked with scratches, ink blots, and symbols that make your stomach twist if you look too long. She sits you down at a table cluttered with dried flowers, bones, candle stubs, and a pile of tiny bells that jingle when you breathe too hard. She slides a piece of rawhide in front of you. On it is a handprint burned into the surface. "This is the gate," she says. You glance at Belle, who's staring into a corner, like he's seen it all before and didn't like any of it. "Looks like a handprint." "It is a handprint," she says, "but it's not yours. It's from someone who tried to stop the train the last time it came through." Your mouth goes dry. "Last time?" She nods. 30 years ago. Before Belle's time, before yours. A woman came from the east, didn't belong, said she had dreams, heard the whistle in her sleep, found a piece of the horn buried under an old water tower. Same as you. Belle finally speaks. She vanished. Took 5 others with her. Some say they boarded the train. Some say they opened the gate and walked through. Either way, she left behind that handprint and a barn full of ash. Bones points to a mark on the map, a jagged symbol that looks vaguely like a train track splitting into a tree. The land remembers. The dust keeps stories. You ask her what the gate is. She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she pours something thick and greenish into a chipped mug and hands it to you. "Drink." You hesitate. Belle just shrugs. "You'll live, probably." It tastes like wet moss and regret. But after the 3rd sip, your head starts to swim, and the room shifts. Not visually, but spatially. Like the corners stretch farther away and the ceiling breathes. Bones begins to speak low and rhythmic, her words almost sung more than spoken. "The gate isn't a door," she says. "It's a bargain. A line between here and not. Between memory and forgetting." You blink. "Is it alive?" She smiles grimly. "Wouldn't that be easier? Oh, the gate is old, older than this land, older than trains, or towns or laws. but something wants to come through it. Something that feeds on crossings, on those who don't belong. You know exactly who she means. She sets down a jar. Inside is a tooth. Too long, too curved, not human. Found that near Dust Creek 30 years ago, after she vanished. You don't ask what took her. You already know. Back in town the dust is worse. A full windstorm kicks up before evening, coating everything in a film of grit that makes breathing feel optional. The townsfolk hunker indoors. Lamps flicker. The sheriff's office door bangs open and shut until Belle finally ties it down with a belt. You retreat to the general store loft, heart heavy and lung scratchy. But you don't sleep. Not yet, because at midnight the whistle comes again. This time it's right outside. You sit bolt upright, revolver in hand, and crawl to the window. And there, barely visible through the swirl of dust and moonlight, is the train. In the middle of town, no tracks, no station. Just sitting there, waiting. No one else stirs. It's like the town is frozen, like time forgot to keep going. You step out into the street, boots crunching on sand. The doors to the train are open now. You see stairs, light, shadows shifting just beyond the threshold. And then a voice, familiar, too familiar, calls your name, softly, almost kindly. It's your voice. You take a step forward, just one. Then you feel a hand on your shoulder. Belle. Not yet, he says. And when you blink, the train is gone. Historical fact, rail lines sometimes bent toward failed towns. Miscalculated routes, collapsed bridges, ghost settlements. Some conductors reported seeing towns on their schedule that didn't exist. They called them paper towns, hallucinated by bad maps or bad whiskey. Fringe fact, a group of spiritualists in 1866 claimed to have summoned a locomotive of the beyond to carry souls to the afterlife. They built a fake track in Kansas, waited for a month, and vanished on the final night. Only their hats were found. Scholarly debate? Is the phantom train archetype just a metaphor for death, for transition, for guilt? Or are these stories rooted in real experiences that defy modern logic? Some claim these trains are temporal artifacts, ghosts not of people but of paths. You lie awake until sunrise. The whistle never comes again that night. But you're starting to think the train wasn't calling for you. It was calling from you. Morning drags its feet into Widow's Rest like it doesn't want to be here any more than you do. The sky is colourless, the wind slow and hot, and the town's usual clatter is muted under a layer of powdery ash that hasn't stopped falling since Red Rock burned. Even the animals are quiet. The chickens barely peck. The horses refuse to meet your eye. Something's wrong with the air. Thinner, maybe, like the world started exhaling for good and hasn't remembered to breathe in. You wash your face in the trough outside the general store, but the water's gone metallic again, and you spit out something that tastes like old nails. Your reflection, wavy, distorted, tinged with rust, shows a version of you that's thinner than you remember. Not just tired, faded. You splash again, harder this time, and hope the feeling passes. It doesn't. The day doesn't start so much as limp forward. Sheriff Bell is seen hammering boards across the windows of the jail, not because of an escaped outlaw or some local drunk swinging a bottle again, but just in case. No one questions what in case means. They all feel it too. The sound of nails biting into wood echoes through town like a war drum played slow. By mid-morning you realise your tooth hurts. Not a little. Not, I should floss more hurt. No, this is frontier hurt. A pulsing hot throb in your lower jaw that makes your eye twitch, and your thoughts come in crooked. You try to shake it off, but by lunchtime you're wincing when you bite into a biscuit and chewing on the other side like a squirrel with dental anxiety. You ask around for a doctor. The response is laughter. Mrs. Halloway hands you a bottle of whiskey and a rusted pair of pliers. Last time anyone needed a tooth pulled, old Tom did it behind the stables, she says. Then the tooth broke and so did the man. We stopped recommending it after that. Great. Someone finally suggests going to the blacksmith. He's the only one who knows how to pull with some control, they say. Used to take teeth from horses and cattle. A jaw's a jaw, more or less. So now you're standing outside the smithy, holding your face and questioning every decision that brought you here. The door creaks open. Inside it's an oven. The smell of iron, sweat, and something more organic fills your nose before you step fully through the doorway. The blacksmith, Mudge, is a tank of a man with forearms the size of stovepipes and a temper to match. His beard has its own atmosphere. and his apron looks like it's survived at least one shootout and a small flood. "You got a bad tooth?" he grunts. You nod. "It's pretty bad." He wipes his hands, grabs a pair of the metal tongs that may or may not have just been used on a horseshoe, and motions to a stool in the corner. "Sit." You sit. "This is going to hurt," he says, like he's warning you that water is wet. "I assumed." "No, like really hurt." You exhale through your nose. "Mudge. I've seen ghost trains. I've heard my own voice calling from another dimension. A tooth is manageable." He snorts. "You're going to wish it was the train." What follows is not exactly medicine. He has you bite down on a stick, ties a strip of leather to your wrist and a spike on the wall so you don't bolt. Then, without much warning, he drives the pliers into your mouth and starts yanking. It's not the pain, though that's impressive in its own right. It's the feeling that something doesn't want to let go. The tooth resists, shifts, and then screeches. Not you, it. A tiny, horrible sound like metal grinding against bone from the inside out. Mudge pauses. "You hear that?" he asks. You nod, mouth full of blood and questions. Finally, with a sickening pop and a flash of something that feels far too cold for your mouth, the tooth comes free. It's black, not rotten, black, glossy, twisted at the root, wrong. It almost pulses in the light. Mudge squints at it. "Well, I ain't never seen a tooth like that." He drops it in a tin cup. The cup immediately dents on one side as if the tooth is too heavy. You don't ask for it back. You're pretty sure if you touched it again, it'd burn its shape into your hand. You stagger outside, cotton stuffed into your mouth, and sit on the ground. Freckles appears beside you like a stray thought. "That the bad tooth?" You nod. He peers into the cup. "Looks like a bullet." You nod again. Then slowly he says, "You reckon it's part of whatever's inside you?" You freeze, because you do reckon that, and you hate that you do. Back at the general store, Mrs. Halloway helps you clean up. She takes one look at the tooth in the cup and mutters a prayer in a language you don't recognise. She doesn't ask what you want done with it. She just pours a jar of salt over it, wraps it in linen, and buries it in the fire pit behind the shop. "You don't keep things like that close," she says. "It remembers your blood." Your head swims, your mouth throbs, and the sky has taken on a strange yellow hue, like someone smeared mustard over the sun. And then, as if the day hasn't already been enough of a horror parade, a message arrives. Not a note this time. A person. A man in a preacher's coat. Not the same one from Hollow Creek. This one's older, eyes glassy, coat torn like he's been crawling for miles. He walks into the centre of town, mouth bleeding, hands shaking, and says only 4 words before collapsing. The gate is open. Belle is on the scene in seconds. You limp out behind him, clutching your jaw. The man is unconscious but breathing shallow. His hands are marked with ash. Burn scars in the shape of rails run across his palms. No one knows who he is. No one knows where he came from, except maybe you. You lean down and whisper to him, "What's on the other side?" He opens one eye just barely and says, "You." Then he passes out again. Historical fact: itinerant preachers often walked alone through dangerous terrain, delivering sermons in camps and towns on the edge of nowhere. Some didn't survive. Some showed up half dead with tales of divine encounters or damnation. Fringe fact: there are 19th century records of iron teeth pulled from the jaws of prospectors near collapsed mines. The accounts were dismissed as myth. The samples mysteriously vanished. Scholarly debate? Could trauma physically alter the body? Early frontier medicine included beliefs that curses, grief, or divine punishment could manifest as bodily deformities. Psychosomatic symptoms? Maybe. Or maybe the body knows when something unnatural takes root. That night you sleep, but your dreams are someone else's. Someone who has your face and teeth made of iron. By the next morning the preacher is gone. Not dead, not in bed, just gone. The cot where Belle laid him out in the jailhouse is still warm, but the man himself has vanished like steam from a coffee mug. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no door left open. It's like he just got up, dusted off his tattered coat and stepped through a crack in the world. Maybe he did. Belle's pacing the office, boots scuffing against the warped floorboards, jaw clenched so tight it looks like it might splinter. "We had someone who knew," he mutters. "Someone who saw the other side, and now we've got nothing but a ghost trail and an empty blanket." You lean against the doorframe, your jaw still aching from the blacktooth incident, and your head pulsing like it's full of bees. We've got more than nothing, you say. We've got a growing pile of wrong. Belle pauses. You're not wrong. Which would be satisfying if it didn't feel like such a terrible victory. Outside, the sun is struggling to break through a low ceiling of haze. The air tastes like coal and sulphur, and the streets of Widow's Rest are quieter than ever. Even Freckles hasn't appeared this morning, which is honestly more alarming than the ghost train sightings. You step into the street and immediately notice something new. Scrawled across the side of the general store in thick black ash are 4 letters, large and crude. Gate. No signature, no footprints, just a word smeared across wood like a warning or an invitation. Mrs. Halloway is already trying to scrub it off with lye soap and a cloth that probably did a tour in the Civil War. I swear, she growls, if that's Cobb's people playing with soot again, I'm going to teach 'em what boiling water feels like. You offer to help, but she waves you off. You've got enough on your shoulders. Go find out who's scribbling cryptic nonsense before the town starts thinking this is the end of days. Spoiler, they already do. You check the jailhouse again, then the church. Nothing. No signs, not even that faint train whistle hum that's haunted the edges of your hearing for days. It's as if everything's gone still. Too still. The kind of stillness that comes before something kicks in a door. But then Belle sends a runner, one of the ranch boys, face flushed from sprinting, to fetch you. "Warehouse," the kid says, panting. "Behind the mill, someone's inside, screaming." You follow him past the stables and into the edge of town, where an old shipping warehouse slouches like it's ready to fall. Used to be for grain, then horses, now it's just another building. The wind whispers through. Belle's already there when you arrive, revolver drawn, eyes narrowed at the boarded up front. "Someone's inside," he says. "I heard 'em." You listen. For a moment nothing, then thump. A low, heavy sound, then again thump thump, then a scream, human, raw, not words, just pain. Belle moves first, kicking the door in with a splintering crack that echoes through the alley like a gunshot. You rush in behind him. What you find isn't what you expect. Inside it's dark. Too dark. Your boots crunch over the broken glass and old hay. In the far corner a shape writhes on the floor. You rush toward it and find a man. Bare-chested, eyes rolled back, arms bound behind him with rope that looks like it's soaked in ink. Carved into the floor beneath him are those same symbols again. Circles, lines, spirals. And surrounding it all, drawn in what you pray is just paint, is a perfect ring. The man is whispering something over and over, fast and frantic. You lean close. He's saying your name. Over and over, your name. Belle grabs your arm. We have to break the circle. You hesitate. What if it's the only thing holding him in? Belle doesn't answer, because that's when the man's eyes snap open. They're yours. Exactly yours. And then his voice, your voice, says, "You left the door open." You stumble back, nearly fall. Belle fires a shot into the ceiling to break whatever spell is choking the room. It's enough. The symbols fade. The whispering stops. And the man goes still. Just still. You check his pulse. Gone. But the floorboards beneath him are warm. Humming. And when you stand, the warehouse feels lighter. As if something just left. Later, sitting on the porch of the general store with your hands wrapped around a mug you forgot to drink from, you try to piece it together. A man tied in a warehouse, speaking in your voice, eyes like a mirror, symbols on the floor that keep showing up all over town, the train, the horn, the gate. They're not random, they're ritual. Mrs. Halloway sits beside you and for once doesn't scold, just lights a pipe and stares at the horizon. "You think it's trying to trade places with you?" she asks eventually. You don't answer right away, because you do, and you're not sure what scares you more, that something wants out or that it wants in. Historical fact. Some 19th century frontier towns practiced forms of folk protection. Symbols carved into thresholds, bones hung from rafters, whispered charms against crossings. Historians often dismissed them as superstition, but the people believed. Fringe fact? There's a rare phenomenon called spontaneous mirroring, where a person in distress begins to take on the features or voice of someone else, documented twice in the 1800s. Both times the mimicked person vanished within a week. So, I don't know, scholarly debate. The idea of identity as fluid, especially in times of trauma or environmental stress, has led to theories of psychic overlay, where two minds overlap across realities. It's been dismissed as pseudoscience, but a few researchers whisper about soul duplication, especially in high-strain moments. That night you bolt your door, you bury the mirror under the bed, and you place salt around the windowsill, because if you see your face staring back from the dark again, you don't know which of you will blink first. By the following day, Widow's Rest is no longer pretending everything's fine. The illusion is over. People don't make eye contact anymore, not out of politeness, but vieille. Doors stay locked even during daylight, curtains pulled tight like eyelids that refuse to see what's coming. The saloon, which once belted out piano tunes and cheap whiskey arguments around the clock, is now silent except for the creaking of its unlatched swing doors in the breeze. You get the sense that everyone is waiting for something, but no one knows if it's salvation or the last nail in the coffin. You wake groggily, throat dry, heart thudding like it's trying to send Morse code from inside your chest. You dreamt again, vivid, detailed, too sharp to feel like dreams. You were printing, setting type, pressing ink over and over. The words kept changing, even as you wrote them. The gate is open, then the gate is you, then just gate, 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 gate in endless rows. Your hand aches as you sit up, you glance down, ink under your fingernails. You didn't sleepwalk, you tell yourself. You had to have just pressed your hand into some old paper, maybe knocked over an inkwell. But there it is, black ink smudged across your palm and a faint print of a single word written backward. Enter. You scrub it off roughly. It takes longer than it should. The ink clings like guilt. By the time you step outside, Bell is already waiting for you on the porch. He doesn't speak, just nods for you to follow. He's holding something in his hands, a folded newspaper, yellowed and damp, the ink smeared in parts. Found this on my desk this morning, he says, but the printing press ain't run in over 2 years. You take it and read the masthead. The Widow's Rest Underground. You frown. You've never seen it before, and yet it feels familiar. Like something you wrote and then forgot. The date reads July the 13th, but the year, 1882. That's not possible, you mutter. I know, Bell replies. The paper's full of strange clipped articles. Nothing mainstream, no cattle auctions, no sheriff's bulletins, just riddles dressed as journalism. There's a column called Echoes from the Rails that's written in the voice of the train. There's an obituary for someone named the original you, and a classified section that simply says, need typesetters, must work in the dark, no questions, pay comes in memories. Bell flips to the back. Found this too? It's a map, or what passes for one. Not of terrain, but ideas, concepts. It lists the gate, the hollow, the returning, and then, in jagged letters, press room. Bell taps that last one. You ever worked a press? No, you say, then pause. I mean, not that I remember. And there it is again. That awful little echo. Not that I remember. As if your memory has seams now, places where something might have slipped in or out. Bell tells you the press might still be buried behind the old post office, in a basement they sealed after a collapse years ago. You've never heard about that. No one has. But that doesn't mean it's not real. You agree to check it out. You find Freckles behind the livery stable. He's been wearing his father's old hat like it makes him bulletproof, and today he's chewing tobacco, because of course he is. You ask him if he knows anything about the old print shop. He nods. Grandpa said there used to be a paper no one read but everyone feared. Said it printed things before they happened. Accidents, names, births that didn't go right. Folks said if your name showed up, you had 3 days to pack or pray. You stare at him. That's comforting. I didn't say it was a nice memory. Back at the post office, Bell uses a crowbar to pry up a warped trapdoor beneath a pile of mouldy ledgers. Beneath that is a staircase, half collapsed, that drops into a room so dark it swallows your lantern light. You go first. The air is stale and strangely humid. The walls are lined with broken shelves, and the floor crunches with old paper and rat bones. And in the centre of the room, like a shrine to forgotten stories, sits a printing press. It's enormous, all gears and levers and inky tendons. You don't know how it's still standing, or why it's breathing. No other way to describe it. With each flicker of light, the machine seems to pulse, as if the rollers are twitching, as if the press is waiting. You approach. Bell stays at the top of the stairs, his face unreadable. A sheet of paper rests in the type bed, already printed. You pull it out. At the top, the Widow's Rest Underground, and the headline, Deputy replaced, New copy acceptable. Your stomach twists. Copy? Belle climbs down slowly, glancing over your shoulder. Maybe it's not talking about text. You flip the page. The next line reads, Original expired at 3:12 a.m, replacement already in play, calibration pending. You check your watch, 3:12 a.m. That's when you woke up with ink on your hands. Belle watches you. His hand rests near his revolver. You meet his gaze. You think I'm not me? He doesn't answer, just stares. You crumple the paper and throw it into the corner. It uncurls on its own. Later, back at the general store, you wash your hands 3 times. The ink still comes back. Mrs. Halloway notices. You've got printer's fingers, she says. I haven't printed anything, you say. She shrugs. Doesn't mean you didn't. You dream again that night. You're at the press, alone, in the dark. But instead of paper, it's printing on skin. And the skin is yours. Historical fact. Frontier towns often had underground or shadow newspapers. Small-run, illegal sheets printed on stolen presses, often used to expose corruption or stir revolution. Some disappeared without a trace. In one case, the printer was found bricked into his own cellar, the final issue in his mouth. Fringe fact, one surviving 19th century paper contains the phrase, Original replaced new draft stable, in a classified ad. It's the only copy ever found. The ink used? Not any known composition. Some say it was iron. Some say it was bone. Scholarly debate? There's a quiet theory in esoteric circles that information, especially printed words, has power over identity, that to name a thing is to own it, and to publish it is to rewrite it. Some argue that haunted texts aren't just stories, but scripts the world is forced to follow. That night, before you fall asleep, you check your name. You write it out carefully in your own hand. It still looks right. But you're not convinced. The next day starts too bright. The kind of sky that looks scrubbed raw, painfully clean, as if the world's trying to pretend nothing strange has happened. The sun's so sharp it hurts your eyes. You step outside squinting and suspicious, certain it's a setup. The air is hot and still, like a pause between arguments, and Widow's Rest has the restless hush of a crowd before a hanging. You don't make it 5 steps before someone nearly bowls you over on the boardwalk. Easy, you bark, catching your balance. The man stumbles back, his arms full of rolled-up canvas posters and a bucket of glue. You recognise him. Monty Trill, the town's barely employed sign painter and part-time chicken thief. He's grinning from ear to ear and out of breath like he's been running all night. It's happening, he gasps. What is? The show, Buffalo Bill's Wild West. They're coming. Real stage, real guns. Posters showed up overnight. You frown. Posters? He unrolls one and shoves it into your hands. The parchment is thick and slightly damp, like it was printed with old ink that hasn't finished setting. It reads, Coming soon to Widow's Rest, Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West spectacle. Gunslingers, ghost riders, the gate revealed. One night only, all aboard the final ride. You blink at it, your skin going cold. Your eyes land on the tagline at the bottom in fine print. No refunds, no returns, all souls final. Monty doesn't seem to notice. He's already running off to slap another poster onto the livery wall. You look up and realise they're everywhere, tacked to doorways, nailed to trees, pasted onto the saloon's swinging doors. No one saw who put them up, and yet they're printed with your town's name, your current nightmare, and the line the gate revealed. Sheriff Bell meets you outside the jailhouse, holding a crumpled copy of the same poster. This a joke? He asks. I don't think anyone's laughing. He sighs. I knew Cody once, years back. He ran shows, sure, but nothing like this. You glance at the sky. You think it's really him? Bell shakes his head. No, I think it's something wearing him or wearing his name. Whatever's coming, it's using the show to get us all in one place. Mrs. Halloway slams her store shutters closed. I swear, she mutters, if this turns into a circus of doom, I'm burning my own building down and blaming termites. Despite the warnings, despite everything, the town gathers. Because that's what people do when there's nothing else to do. They cling to spectacle, to the idea that if something looks fun, it can't be dangerous, even if the posters are clearly cursed, even if the flyers curl at the corners like they're breathing. By sundown, a stage has appeared outside of town. No wagons, no workers seen, just there. A full setup, bleachers, bunting, lights strung between posts. An arch over the entrance reads, "The Wild West, Final Edition." The bleachers fill slowly. Families, ranch hands, even the preacher who saw too much and vanished days ago. He's there now, sitting in the front row like he never left. His hands are clean, his coat pressed, his eyes blank. You stand beside Belle near the edge of the crowd, hands resting on your revolver. And then the music starts. Low, twangy, faint banjo and fiddle, as if they're coming from a gramophone half buried in sand. From behind the curtain he appears, Buffalo Bill Cody, or something that looks like him. He's tall, proud, wearing a white hat and a coat stitched with stars. His beard flows like a waterfall made of snow and secrets. He waves to the crowd and shouts, "Ladies and gentlemen of the frontier, welcome to the final ride." Applause, but not from everyone. Only the first few rows clap, the rest stare, frozen. Belle mutters, "Those aren't townsfolk." You peer closer. The front rows are filled with faces you don't recognise. Not unfamiliar in the normal way, but off. Too clean, too symmetrical, like wax figures from a museum no one remembers building. Buffalo Bill continues, "Tonight you will see wonders, ghost riders from beyond, a duel that defies death, and at midnight, the gate." You flinch. He smiles directly at you. "I see we have our deputy here," he says, "our chosen soul, the one who crossed without knowing and stayed despite warning." The crowd parts. The spotlight somehow finds you. You freeze. "I didn't volunteer for anything," you say. He chuckles. "You didn't need to." Two performers step onto the stage, both wearing versions of your face. One dressed as you were when you arrived, dusty, lost, confused. The other as you are now, revolver at the hip, jaw clenched, eyes heavy. They begin to duel, shot for shot, move for move. It's not choreography, it's mimicry. One falls, the original, the other bows. And Buffalo Bill cries out, "The copy prevails, as it always must." The lights dim, the stage fades, the crowd vanishes. You're standing alone beside Belle. Empty benches, no sound, just dust and cold stars above. "Was that real?" you ask. Belle doesn't answer. You look down, a ticket is in your hand, and you don't know where it came from. It reads, "Passenger admitted, line terminal, seat 0. Back in town, the posters are gone. Not torn, not weathered, gone. The boards where they hung are bare and polished. Mrs. Halloway says she never saw them. Freckles says there never was a show, but you remember the music, the duel, yourself twice. You keep the ticket in your coat because you know this ride isn't over. Not yet." Historical fact. Buffalo Bill Cody toured across America and Europe, often blurring reality with performance. He reenacted battles, hired real Native Americans, and built myths as entertainment. He was as much fiction as fact. Fringe fact. Some accounts from small towns claimed Bill's show arrived without warning, and afterward, people were missing, always ones with no past or nothing tying them down. These stories were dismissed as urban legends. No official records remain. Scholarly debate? Is performance a form of summoning? Some folklorists believe repeating a story on stage can reawaken it, especially if tied to trauma or memory. But when we perform a myth often enough, it stops being pretend. That night, the stars seem brighter. The air smells faintly of gunpowder and ink, and when you fall asleep, you dream you're holding your own programme, but the acts haven't happened yet, and one of them is titled The Deputy's Farewell. When morning comes, the town feels rewound. Not restored, just reset, like someone cranked the gears backward, hoping to erase whatever happened last night. The bleachers are gone, the stage, the lights, the arch, nothing but disturbed dust where they stood. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was a collective dream Widow's Rest decided not to mention. But you do know better, and dreams don't usually leave you with splinters in your boots and a ticket in your coat pocket that refuses to burn. You tried to, tossed it in the stove at sunrise, the embers hot and hungry. It curled up like it was ready to vanish, then uncurled itself. Perfect, unsinged, even smelled stronger afterward, like fresh ink and ozone. So now it's back in your coat left breast pocket, a whisper of admission you can't throw away. The people in town move quieter now. They don't speak about the show, they don't ask questions, they don't look at each other for too long. There's a general agreement spoken through silence and half-hearted routines. If you pretend everything's fine, maybe the world will forget you were on the guest list. But they haven't forgotten you. Not the ones watching from the edges. Around midday, a woman you've never seen before steps into the general store. She wears black from head to toe, not the neat mourning black of a widow, but the rough faded cloth of someone who's been in the dirt longer than they've been above it. Her hair is plaited in a rope down her back and her eyes are the colour of midnight. She looks like someone who's visited every ghost town in the territory and never asked to come back. She doesn't speak, just walks up to the counter, sets down a bundle wrapped in velvet and pushes it toward you. Bell's there too, leaning against a barrel of dried beans that no one ever buys. He watches the exchange without blinking. You unfold the bundle. Inside is a bone, long, smooth and perfectly white, but it's carved, lettered, your name, etched into the surface as if someone wrote it there while the bone was still alive. You look at the woman. What is this? She finally speaks, and her voice is smoke wrapped in gravel. It's a warning, or an invoice. Invoice for what? She tilts her head. Your place, on the train. Then she turns and walks out, leaving nothing but the scent of sage and iron behind her. Bell says nothing for a while. Then he whispers, I've seen bones like that once, long time ago. A marshal up in Dead Hollow had one. It had the word farewell scratched into it. He died 3 days later, with a railroad spike in his chest. You wrap the bone back up and tuck it beneath the counter. It doesn't feel like ownership. It feels like someone filed you under pending. Later you find yourself walking, not for any reason. Not because you have a destination, just walking. Past the stable, the church, the collapsed mining shaft outside town. Your boots carry you like they're tired of the waiting. Eventually, you find yourself at the edge of Widow's Rest, where the land flattens and turns pale. You spot something in the distance, a line. 2 of them, actually. Thin, dark, running through the dust, train tracks. But they don't go anywhere. No station, no tie-ins, no junction. Just tracks that appear in the middle of nothing, stretching out into more nothing. You walk beside them for a while, unsure whether you're heading somewhere or being led. The air grows still, heavier. Then you hear the rhythm. Faint at first. Chuk, 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 chuk. Like a train approaching far, far away. You stop. Turn, no engine, no smoke. But the sound continues. Chuk, chuk, chuk. Then you realise it's not coming from the tracks. It's coming from beneath them. You kneel and press your hand to the metal. Warm, not heat from the sun, heat like blood. You straighten quickly, look around. And there, off to your right, you see a figure. Another version of you. Not the copy from the show, not the man in the warehouse. This one's different. He's older, tired, wearing a duster that hangs off his shoulders like it's made of regrets. He's standing still, watching the tracks, a rifle slung over one shoulder and a silver watch dangling from his fingers. You walk toward him. He doesn't move. When you reach him, he finally speaks. I tried to stop it too. You open your mouth. No sound comes out. He continues, the train, the gate, the swapping. I buried the horn, tore up the tracks, shot my reflection, burned the press. But it always circles back. Who are you? He turns to face you, and you see it. Your face, your scar, your jacket, everything. He smiles, just a little. You, a few rides ahead. Then he vanishes. No poof, no special effects, just gone. The dust swirls. You're alone again. That night you return to town. Bell's waiting for you on the jailhouse steps, chewing the last of a cigar he doesn't seem to enjoy. You feel it, don't you? He asks. The change. You nod. Clock's moving strange, and he says. Hours skipping, or looping. I watched the same crow fly across the sky 3 times this afternoon. Not a crow, the same one. You sit beside him and watch the sun set twice. Historical fact. The Transcontinental Railroad was a feat of engineering, but many of its smaller offshoots were plagued by disappearances. Workers went missing, tracks warped overnight. A few lines were abandoned after only a single trip without explanation. Fringe fact, in 1883, a settler in Nevada claimed to find tracks that led in a perfect circle. No start, no end. He followed them for hours. only to return to where he began and find his wagon aged 20 years. His wife inside hadn't aged a day. Scholarly debate? Time distortion in folklore often signals places where reality thins. Some believe these tales originated from natural disorientation, magnetic anomalies, or starvation. Others believe they represent literal time loops, moments where the world folds inward. You lie in bed that night holding the bone, not because it comforts you, but because you want to know when it gets cold. You're not sure what finally wakes you. Could be the scraping at the window, or the hum of something just outside your dreams. Could be the whisper of your own name from a voice that sounds almost like yours. Either way, when your eyes open, it's still pitch black and the whole world feels like it's holding a breath. You reach for the lamp, but it flickers before your fingers touch it and dies again. You try a second match, same result. On the third try the flame holds, but only just. Its light dances nervously across the wooden walls of the general store loft like it's looking for an exit. You sit up, and that's when you hear it. The train whistle. Close this time, not distant, not dreamed, right there. You throw on your boots, teeth gritted against the cold knot forming in your gut. When you step outside, the air is still, and the stars hang like dropped pins on the velvet. Widow's Rest is silent. No movement, no light from windows, no barking dogs or braying mules. Not even Biscuit stirs in the stable. And then, clang! The unmistakable sound of a cowcatcher hitting a rail spike. You spin toward the edge of town. It's here. The train, but not like before. This time you can see everything. The engine glides in without steam, without coal, without need. It's too long, too tall. Its frame shifts subtly as you watch, like it's alive, like it's adjusting. Each car behind it is different. One made of blackened wood, one a dull brass, one almost translucent like smoke in a jar. No two alike, all connected by hinges that bend wrong and too far. The tracks weren't there yesterday, but now they've grown out of the dirt like vines of iron, wrapping the town in a slow, perfect circle. People begin to emerge. Not many, just a few, in nightshirts, coats, half-dressed and dazed. You see Freckles in his father's boots, eyes wide, mouth slack. You see old Miller, clutching a Bible with pages torn out. Mrs. Halloway stands on her porch, pale, mouthing something over and over you can't hear. The town is sleepwalking, and the doors on the train are open. From within each car, soft golden light spills out, inviting, warm, wrong. Bell is beside you now, you didn't even hear him approach. We're not stopping it, he says. No. But maybe we can slow it down. You step forward. The moment your boot touches the rail, the train shudders. Not violently, more like a ripple through a pond. A moment of recognition, like it knows you. And then, from the third car on the left, a figure emerges. You. Again. But this time they're wearing your clothes exactly as they are now. Same shirt, same dust on your knees, same bruise on your jaw. It's not an echo, it's a mirror. They step down the stairs. You don't move. They stop 3 feet in front of you. I've already seen the end, they say softly, and you're not ready. Are you me? They smile. No, I'm what they printed, what the press decided you should be. Bell raises his rifle. The copy turns to him. You'll shoot me, it won't help. You ask, what's on the train? The mirror you glances toward the open cars. Versions, they say. Traded stories, swapped souls. Passengers who stayed too long in one reality and wore out the stitching. You shake your head. I never agreed to this. You didn't have to, the copy says. You looked into the mirror. You wrote your name in ink. You held the horn, and you kept the ticket. They reach into their coat and hold up something familiar, your iron tooth. You instinctively touch your jaw. It still aches. You're not a deputy anymore, the copy says. You're a page, a draft, a soul being edited. Behind you, more townsfolk are approaching the train. No one's stopping them. No one can. You feel it, the pull, like gravity, like guilt. Bell grabs your arm. You can't get on. You look at him. I think I already did. Then, without warning, Freckles sprints toward the nearest car. You don't think. You run after him, catching up just as he reaches the steps. You grab his collar and yank him back. He fights, eyes glassy. It's calling me, he sobs. I saw my mum inside. She waved. You're dreaming, you yell. She's gone. But she said the ride was short, just one stop. She said we could come back. You pull him away. He collapses into you, crying. When you turn, the train is watching. You feel it. A presence behind those windows, not people, not ghosts, editorial eyes, measuring, judging, rewriting. Bell fires his rifle once into the air. The shot echoes like a whip crack, and something deep within the engine growls. Not mechanical, animal. The train doors begin to close, and not fast, but deliberate. You back away, Freckles clinging to you, Bell covering your retreat. The engine whistles. Not a call, a warning. Then the train moves. No puff of steam, no lurch. It glides. Not along the rails, with them. The tracks rise and slither beneath it like a snake's body pulling it forward. Dust billows out. Shadows stretch. The light from the windows turns red, then violet, then fades. And it disappears. Gone. Tracks 2. Nothing but scorched earth. You turn to Bell. What the hell was that? He just stares after it. Last boarding call, he says. Later, you sit by the fire, the ticket in your hand. The print has changed. It now reads, round trip in progress. Historical fact? Obvious. Several railroad towns were abandoned mid-growth. Whole crews vanishing after completing only partial lines. Records simply stop. Journals recovered mention too many arrivals, and wrong trains at wrong times. Fringe fact? Conductor's log from 1884 lists a stop called Erivale, a town that appears on no map. The final entry boarded a man who looked like me. He had no shadow. I gave mine to him. Train moved on. Scholarly debate. Is it possible for a location to rewrite those within it? Some argue memory and identity are fluid under stress, but others believe certain phenomena can impose narrative, turning people into characters trapped in a story with only one author. That night your reflection winks at you, and for the first time, you're not sure who's in control anymore. The next morning is a lie. There's birdsong, impossibly bright light pouring through the windows, a breeze that smells like sage and river water. Widow's Rest hums like a town that hasn't seen horror. The boards on the general store's porch don't creak like they usually do. The church bell rings once, clean and confident, as if it's calling people to a service that never stopped. The townsfolk walk slower, smile easier, talk like none of them heard the train whistle echo through their blood just hours ago. But you know better. It's not a good day, it's a rewritten one. You step outside into the sunshine and feel it immediately. Too warm, too welcoming, like something designed by someone who's only read about how morning should feel. Even the dust has settled politely. You glance around. Bell is nowhere to be seen. Neither is Freckles. That's when you notice the sign. New, painted fresh, tacked to the post outside the store. Widow's Rest. Population 78. You blink. It's been 77 for weeks. You count twice. Someone was added. Back inside, Mrs. Halloway hums as she unboxes jars that you know she didn't order. The labels are printed cleanly, neatly, with little flourishes at the corners. One reads, Memory Jam, a taste of what was. Another, Eraser beans, start your morning blank. You pick one up. It's cold to the touch, and the words blur slightly as you read them. Mrs. Halloway beams. I don't know where these came from, but I love them. And this packaging, it's just darling. You ask her where she got them. She blinks. You brought them in? No, I didn't. Well, someone who looked like you did. The hairs on the back of your neck rise. You head to the jailhouse. Bell's still not there, but the office has changed. New coat of paint on the walls, desk reorganised. One of the wanted posters now has a red voided stamp across it, and someone's added a chalkboard in the back listing names and tasks. You're listed as assistant conductor. You run your hand over it. It's real chalk, real handwriting, real wrong. Back outside, people wave at you like your family. You spot Dusty Ben the cattleman sipping a bottle of Recall whiskey and chatting amiably with a barber you know left town a month ago. He shouldn't be here. And yet, he is, uffing, like he never vanished. You catch Bell finally down by the river. He's different, not in appearance exactly, but in posture. Looser, less weight behind his eyes. Hey, you call. He turns, smiles faintly. Deputy! Your stomach tightens. We don't use titles. He shrugs. Today's different. You sit beside him on the riverbank, the waters flowing faster than usual, full of foam and glints of silver. Almost too lively. Tell me you remember the train, you say. He stares ahead. I remember wanting to forget it. That's not the same. No, he agrees, but it's safer. You pull the ticket from your coat, still there, still printed. Only now, beneath round trip in progress, there's a schedule. It ends tonight. One stop left. Bell doesn't react when you show him. He just says, I think we already boarded. I think we never got off. That evening the sunset is perfect. Orange skies, lazy clouds, wind just strong enough to flutter curtains and stir memories. It's beautiful, staged, cinematic. The kind of day poets write about. And for the first time you understand how beauty can be terrifying, because none of it's real. The church fills up after dark, no sermon, no invitation, just quiet bodies sliding into pews like sleepwalkers. You sit in the back, Bell beside you, Mrs. Halloway in the third row. Freckles, he's back now, clutching his dad's hat again. Everyone's waiting. You don't know what for. And then, from behind the pulpit, you walk out. Not a copy, not a version, just you. Same clothes, same posture, same scar on your jaw, but this one's smiling. Calm, rehearsed. Welcome, you say. Bell tenses. The you on the pulpit continues. You've done well. You've played your parts, the edits are complete. The story ends tonight. You stand. This isn't me. The copy smiles wider. It is now. The town's accepted the draft. I never agreed. You held the ticket. You entered the gate. You watched the duel. You drank the ink. You wrote yourself out. I just filled the vacancy. The church doors swing open. Outside the train waits. But it's not on tracks. It's floating, hovering, each car glowing faintly, doors wide open. No sound, just the pressure of it. You draw your revolver, aim it at the pulpit. The other you doesn't flinch. You can't shoot out a sentence, it says. You pull the trigger anyway. Bang! The bullet hits flesh, splinters wood. The copy stumbles, bleeds and laughs. Too late, you printed the ending. Then it collapses. The townsfolk don't scream, they applaud. Slow, even, polite. Bell grabs your shoulder. We need to leave. You nod. But the applause keeps going, and now the train is applauding too, each door rattling in rhythm. Outside the sky turns ink black. The stars blink out, one by one. You run. The town blurs around you. Signs smear. Faces stretch. Your own voice calls after you, whispering, you're almost done. You and Bell reach the edge of town just as the train screams. Not a whistle. A scream, yours. And then, for just a second, the town flickers, like a page being turned. Historical fact. Some towns did vanish overnight. Government records list populations one day, then nothing the next. No explanation, no survivors, just sealed files and folklore. Fringe fact, one derelict train car was found abandoned in the Nevada desert with mirrors covering the walls. The only item inside, a ticket labelled Last Draft. No one ever claimed it. Scholarly debate? Can a person be written out of their own life? Philosophers argue about narrative identity, the theory that we exist through stories. If that story's overwritten, edited, twisted, are we still us? You hide the ticket under your shirt, because the last line is printed now. Departure. Midnight. 1 seat only. You don't sleep. How could you? Midnight approaches with the weight of a second death. You sit on the floor of the general store, back against the counter, arms resting on your knees. Bell's asleep in the corner, snoring lightly with a rifle across his chest. Freckles is curled near the door like a stray hugging a saddle blanket. And you're holding the ticket. The paper's warm now, not like a match or fire, more like something alive. The ink throbs faintly under your thumb, pulsing in time with your heartbeat. Or maybe its own. You keep reading the last line. Departure, midnight, 1 seat only. You flip the ticket over for the 100th time, and there's a new line. You wrote this, now ride it. You're so far past understanding that the words no longer confuse you. They just confirm what you've started to accept. This has never been a fight. It's a submission, a handoff. You're not being hunted, you're being handed over. The world outside is frozen, windless, moonless. Even the insects have quit. The clock above the counter ticks, but the hands haven't moved in over an hour. You touch your wristwatch, midnight exactly. Bell stirs, opens one eye. It's time. You nod. Together, you step outside. The town is clean, too clean. Not a scrap of paper, not a misplaced wagon wheel, not even a crooked shutter. Widow's Rest has been finalised. You can feel it. The edits are done, the margins closed, the story ready to end, and at the far edge of town, waiting at the invisible platform you never knew existed, is the train. It's larger now, taller, more complete. Its engine is carved with symbols that glow faintly, like letters from a language that hates being spoken. The cars stretch into the darkness, no longer physically connected, just hovering, held together by will and momentum. There's a pulsing energy along the rails, like reality is being magnetised towards something deeper. You approach slowly, boots crunching over gravel that wasn't here yesterday. The ticket in your hand grows hot enough to sting. Bell stops you a few feet from the first car. "You sure about this?" he asks. "No." "You think if you get on it'll stop?" "Oh, sure." "No. But if you don't..." You glance at him. "It writes someone else in my place." He nods, doesn't argue. He hands you something, your revolver, cleaned, loaded, tucked into your holster like a farewell gift. "Just in case," he says. The steps to the first car lower on their own. The door opens. Inside, light, soft, warm, deceiving. You glance back once. Bell raises 2 fingers in a half salute. "See you in the sequel," he says, and you step on board. The door shuts behind you. Instantly, the world changes. It's not just a train car. It's a corridor of sound and movement. Windows flicker with places you've never been. Wars, weddings, deserts, oceans, entire lives. Not memories, options. You walk through them, each car is a draft of what you could have been. One shows you in a blacksmith's apron, hammering out horseshoes, face lined with soot but eyes clear. Another reveals you running a saloon, laughing with strangers, old and content, not a single ghost in your shadow. One shows you dead in a ditch, a bullet hole where your story stopped. You pass them all. At the 5th car, the doors open on their own. Inside, the printing press. The same one from Widow's Rest, only elevated, floating, spinning on an axis that shouldn't exist. The type arms move on their own, carving words into empty air. The ink glows gold. You see yourself there. Not a copy, not a reflection, just you, or what's left. You're wearing a conductor's coat now, buttons shaped like hourglasses. Your eyes are hollow but focused. In one hand, the horn, in the other, the iron tooth. You raise both as you approach the press, and you hear your own voice, calm and clear. To close a story, you must finish the sentence. The press spins faster. Ink drips from the sky. Words begin forming in the air. The deputies step to board. You scream. "No!" The words vanish. You run, past the press, through the next door. The car is empty, just one chair, facing a window that shows your life. Not a version, yours. Widow's Rest, the storm, Bell, Freckles, the gunfight, the laugh, the fall, all of it. You step closer, and then a figure sits up from the chair. It's you, but different. It turns, eyes like glass, mouth stitched shut. It hands you a pen, points to the window, to the blank space beneath the scene, where your story ends. You take the pen, it burns, but you write. He never got off the train. The scene freezes. The world shudders. You fall backward, land in the final car, and you know it's the last because there's nothing beyond it. Just void. A quiet, waiting void. Inside a bench, a mirror, you sit and see yourself. Everything you've done. Everything that's been done to you. You reach into your coat and pull out the ticket. It reads, "Thank you for riding," then fades. Bell's voice echoes somewhere in your mind. "See you in the sequel." You laugh, soft, tired, because if this is a sequel, you don't remember the first part. Historical fact. In rare cases, trains did vanish. The Vandermeer incident of 1874 reported a private luxury train entering a tunnel and never emerging. Inside were 8 passengers, none ever seen again. Fringe fact? In some indigenous lore, spirit rails connect worlds. Trains that ferry not souls but stories. Unfinished ones, ones overwritten, ones lost in translation. Scholarly debate? Is a person the story they tell or the one told about them? Philosophers have long argued that memory, identity, and narrative are indistinguishable. If your tale is hijacked, are you still you? You stare out the window into the void and wait for the next chapter to begin. It's hard to tell when the train stops. There's no jolt, no hiss of brakes, no screech of metal on metal. One moment you're in motion, the void rolling past the windows like a film reel made of fog, and the next, stillness. A thick, suspended kind of stillness, like the air is listening to see what you'll do next. You stand slowly, boots echoing on the polished wood floor of the final car. Everything inside feels sharper now, colours brighter, shadows heavier, gravity just a hair stronger. The kind of detail that says, this part matters. You walk to the door at the end of the car and place your hand on the handle. It's cold, not icy, but precise. A scalpel's cold. The door swings open. Outside is not Widow's Rest. And yet, it is. It looks like the town. Same layout, same buildings, the church, the general store, the stables. But everything's too clean, the colours too vivid. The sky overhead is deep purple streaked with gold. A twilight you've never seen in this life. The wind smells like memory, old ink, scorched cedar, peppermint and grief. You step off the train, the world doesn't shift. It waits. You walk slowly down the main street. Every building is silent. Windows open but dark. No sounds, no footsteps, no breathing. It's like someone built a perfect model of Widow's Rest, then walked away just before bringing it to life. Until you hear the bell. One single deep chime from the church tower. You turn. Bell is standing in the street, but it's not your Bell. It's the Bell you saw during that vision in the warehouse, the one whose eyes had already seen this place. He's older, tired. The grey in his beard has taken over. His badge is tarnished. His right hand trembles slightly where it rests near his holster. You made it, he says. You squint at him. I think so. He nods, expression unreadable. Thought you would. Is this it, you ask? He sighs. Depends on what you mean by it. You're not dead, if that's what you're wondering. Not exactly. You're just off the map. You walk closer. What is this place? Bell gestures around. The last station. The centre of the story. Everything the train pulls apart gets dumped here. The edits, the misprints, the early drafts that couldn't hold together. Call it the back room of reality. You frown. Oh, then why does it look like home? He shrugs. Because the story needs an ending, and endings need a setting. Your mind filled in the details. This town is just the template. The press pressed it into you. A door creaks open. You both look. Mrs. Halloway steps out of the general store. Her eyes are glassy, her hands stained with ink. She walks past you without blinking. Her lips move silently, repeating something to herself. You strain to hear. So many versions. Which one was mine? I remember it differently. She vanishes into the church. You glance at Belle. What happened to her? She got rewritten too many times. Couldn't keep her place in the narrative. She's stuck on a loop now, shadows of herself running in circles. Your stomach turns. That going to happen to me? He looks at you carefully. Not if you finish what you started. You grip your revolver. And what's that? Belle points behind you. You turn. The press is there, right in the middle of the street. Enormous, floating, turning slowly like a carousel made of gears and scripture. Its arms spin through the air, carving letters into invisible parchment. You feel the pull of it deep in your bones. The press finishes the story, Belle says. You decide what gets printed. You step toward it. The air thickens, your teeth buzz. A blank page spins into view. Your hand reaches forward. The pen appears in your palm. Ink drips from its tip, and this is it. You write. He returned. The press freezes. The wind stops. Belle vanishes. The page ignites, and everything goes black. You wake up in the jailhouse and back in Widow's Rest, the real one. Belle is beside you. Your Belle. Younger. Alive. He's shaking your shoulder. You good? He asks. You've been out for hours. You sit up slowly. Everything looks right. The light is normal. The dust smells like dust, not memory. The window creaks the same way. Biscuit neighs outside. You're back. But are you? You glance down. The revolver at your side isn't yours. It's older. More ornate, the handle is carved with the same symbols from the press. You pull it out. Etched along the barrel are the words, "Final Draft." Freckles bursts in. "You won't believe it! A new family's moving in from Hollow Creek. Said something about starting over." You stare at him, at his too familiar grin, and suddenly remember a car on the train. One that showed a version of you raising a family on a porch just outside of Hollow Creek. You look at Belle. "Has this town always had 78 people?" He frowns. "Yeah. Why?" "No reason," you lie. Outside, the world moves on. The wind is real again. The porch creaks. The saloon doors swing open and closed, just like they should. But you know better. You know stories don't end. They just pause until someone reads them again. Historical fact, some ghost towns have returned from the dead, abandoned, then rebuilt with no known funding, no known buyers. One researcher traced 11 cases where rebuilt towns matched journals of fictional places. Fringe fact, a single printing press from the 1800s called the Black Cylinder was rumoured to write stories on its own. Last seen in 1910, it was allegedly buried in the Arizona desert with an iron key locked inside. Scholarly debate? The narrative theory of self suggests our identities are stories written and rewritten daily. But what happens when external forces take the pen? Can we reclaim authorship? Or are we just the page? You sit on the porch that night and write a name in your notebook. Not your own, just a placeholder, because you're not sure who you are anymore. But you are sure. You're the only one left holding the pen. The morning sun spills into Widow's Rest like an unwelcome guest, burning through the lingering fog of your restless night. The town is stirring, but the movements feel slow, almost rehearsed, like actors waiting for their cues on a set that's been standing too long without a director. You sip weak coffee on the porch, the bitterness grounding you, but the taste isn't enough to erase the fog creeping at the edges of your mind. Bell arrives, hat low over his eyes, boots clicking softly on the wood. "You ready?" he asks, voice rough but steady. "Ready? For what exactly? You've lost track. For a showdown with a train that isn't a train? For a duel with a shadow of yourself? For the last page of a story you didn't want to start?" You shrug, knowing there's no turning back. Together, you walk to the edge of town where the horizon melts into a haze of dust and dreams. The tracks are waiting, endless iron snakes glinting in the dawn. The train waits too, bigger now, more imposing, yet impossibly fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. Its doors are open, breathless invitations to the unknown. Belle turns to you, eyes meeting yours. "This is it. The end of the line." You nod. The ticket burns in your pocket, a reminder of the journey you never signed up for but can't escape. You step forward, boots on the rails, heart a wild drum in your chest. The train hums to life, a sound that is everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through your bones. Doors close behind you with a whispered finality. The world blurs and twists, colours bleeding into one another, time folding like paper. You are both nowhere and everywhere. Inside, the corridors stretch endlessly, walls lined with mirrors that don't reflect but reveal. Each shows a different you, young and hopeful, tired and scarred, lost and found. You walk past them all, the weight of their lives pressing on your shoulders. At last, you reach the engine room, where the printing press waits, the heart of this impossible vessel. Its type arms move with a will of their own, etching your story into the fabric of reality. The ink glows with a fierce light, and you see the words form. The deputy chose to write his own ending. Your hand moves, guided by something beyond you, grasping the pen that burns like fire in your palm. You write. The train shudders. Time holds its breath. You finish. The press stops. Silence. Then, with a gentle lurch, the train begins to move, this time forward. You step outside. Widow's Rest is different, brighter, fuller, alive. Belle is beside you, smiling. Freckles runs up, waving a letter. You open it. It reads, "The story is yours. Write it well." You smile, the weight lifting. You're not a passenger anymore. You're the author. Historical fact. Some frontier towns thrived long after being declared dead, reborn through the determination of settlers and the power of new narratives. Stories matter. Fringe fact. The idea of rewriting one's destiny through ritual or storytelling appears across cultures. Some call it narrative magic, a power older than printing presses or railroad tracks. Scholarly debate, modern psychology and philosophy explore narrative identity, how our sense of self is shaped by the stories we tell ourselves. The question remains, if you rewrite the story, can you rewrite yourself? You stand on the porch as the sun rises, ready. The pen is in your hand, the page is blank, and your story finally begins.